Damn. Good to see you.
Yes. This is a new link altogether, right?
It's the same meeting, but it has a password on it. So I'm wondering whether the no password link would still work.
I
I
tried,
think
it doesn't work. Right. Try the old link. You asked me for a passcode.
I hate that because I let my membership lag and now it doesn't let me use these no passcode links.
You might need to talk to the tech support there. They can fix that.
They can? Okay, I'll try that.
Well, that's what tech support is for.
You'd be surprised.
Well, nobody else can help you besides tech support if there's
That's
anybody
true.
on earth can help you, right?
That's true.
So it's a different code, I think. The old one.
So I posted it in both of those messenger groups so people can see it.
Yeah.
How have you been this week?
Say again, I'm sorry.
Hmm?
Is you say something? I didn't hear you.
Oh,
Or
I
something.
said, how have you been this week?
Busy like hell. Yeah, revenue is down. Security issue. One of the
We were
top
talking about that
distributors.
security issue last time.
Huh?
You did mention the security issue last time. Still not.
Yeah, they just fixed it yesterday. They just fixed it yesterday. Take them 2 weeks to get out of ransomware. I'm pretty sure they didn't pay. They were asking for too much money or something. If they pay, they don't need to pay. I mean, take 2 weeks to get it done. If they pay, they will restore it. I mean, I was told that even if you pay, you might not be 100% get your data back. And you cannot get your money back also because you pay them by, what do you call that? Bitcoin, non-traceable, that
Really?
kind of thing. Yeah. So be careful with your stuff. You guys have a good tape backup system in place?
We have multiple backups plus Iron Mountain, I think. We use Iron Mountain.
Yep. Hey, Mato, is it cloud or is it on premise?
All of our systems now, well, let's see, 99% of them are cloud-based.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
So you need a cloud-based tape backup system then.
Right. So we also have retention policies, legally mandated, and then we also have deletion, after the end of the retention policy. But for records that are important, for corporate records, we also have Iron Mountain. Or at least I see those trucks come by every time.
Got it. Yeah. Well, assume that you're going to hit by ransomware. Somebody, it's better to assume that you hit it and how do you restore it than assuming nothing better will happen to you. Yeah, that's my policy. On average, I spend about 10 to 15 hours a week on security stuff. So it's like that take out a big chunk of my week. What kind of firewall you guys are using?
I'll find out.
Firewall.
What kind of firewall?
Yeah, what brand or what? Cisco, Fortinet?
We have everything in AWS.
Oh, everything in AWS.
Yeah.
But you still need a firewall.
We use, okay, last time I found out about this is probably at least 10 years ago because I haven't ever looked into this in the last decade.
You're CTO, man.
I'm not the CTO. There's a different CTO. I'm the SVP of engineering.
Okay.
And IT specifically is not under me.
Okay.
It's put it under operations and finance and that sort of.
Okay. I thought you
I
were.
mean, if it was up to me, I would do things very differently.
Yeah,
And
you don't want that. Trust me. It's very different. It's big chunk. Anyway.
Yeah, because we have IT policies that really hamper productivity and development. It's really secure.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's see if Barry can join. I've not seen him.
Yeah, he usually does. You talk to him yet? Talk to him directly?
Not this morning. He's been interacting. He's been very busy on Facebook.
Okay, yeah.
But I know he's active even this morning.
Let's see here. Where can I find him?
Let's see.
Yeah, he's active.
Okay, so I'm sending him the link directly to him.
I did.
Okay.
The one that sent end with MW.
Yes. That one. So has there been anything on your mind that would be relevant to discuss here? I always go back to my posts to see if that would generate any stimuli, but I was curious about what's been on your mind.
I'm kind of like go with the flow. I don't really care what topic it is. It's not important to me. All I can is that, I always get value out of any discussion. It makes no difference to me. So I'm kind of like whatever people want to talk about is important to them, then it's important to me. Whatever they don't want to talk about, it's not important to them, it's not important to me. So I don't have agenda. This is what I call minimum expectation, maximum flexibility. So that's how I live my life.
That's awesome, because not many people would actually do that with 4 hours a week,
For me, it's a privilege and it's an honor to be able to hang out with you guys and have fun with it and say what's on your mind and feel safe and feel loved, feel respected. I think, if you value my opinion or my perspective, I'm all for it. Yeah. Otherwise, when I'm dead, 6 feet under, I won't have a chance to give it out anyway.
That is also impressive. What's been on my mind now for several years
Yeah, go for it.
is this tension between reason and religion.
Between what reason? I don't get it.
Yes, between reason and rational thought on one side, and religion and dogma and closed-mindedness, it seems, on the other.
We can talk about it for 3 days with me. I've been studying religion since I was not allowed to study religion when I was 11, so I was allowed to study religion when I was 13. So I've been studying religion, and because I live in a multiracial country like Malaysia, and I'm heavily involved with United Religion Initiative for 20 plus years. So one of my hot topic. The way I think about religion is like this. So, I mean, I have many perspectives, but this is the most important one that has always come out on top. It's like, like Einstein say, any issue that resolve have conflict between two levels, like you and me are having a fight or argument or whatever, we cannot resolve it. You have to go higher level. So that's why you got, like the civilized world, we have family dispute, they got police involved, you got judge involved, you got Supreme Court involved, like that. So between you and me, we need God. We need a meta perspective. So those are useful. So religion is useful because it has a higher thought, higher belief. So I use religion for that perspective 9 out of 10 times. It may be a spiritual guidance, you may be labeled any way you want, but all it is a meta perspective. It has no other purpose other than a meta perspective, from my perspective, from that perspective. Of course, everybody want to think of it this way. Also, I call that how you and I talk about yes and no is very digital. Religion is very fuzzy logic. So it's like, I hope, I wish, I pray, that kind of like, what I call that, you kind of like fortune teller perspective. You can call that, they call it, religion perspective. I call it, you can call it wishy-washy if you like. I don't care, but you can also call it like fuzzy logic perspective. We can call it anything but digital. So don't waste your time too much on it because you're not going anywhere with it. Because the tool is only useful when it's useful to you. It's like a car. It's useful to you when you can drive, it can get you to places, you feel you're safe. When a car is broken down, it doesn't serve your need. You take out your parking spot, man. So don't waste my time on it.
So there's a lot there. The part that I think is useful for me to spend time on is the part that says there is, and you know this, in society, a religious faction that seems to be eroding our schools, our society, our treatment of women,
Yep,
our ability to have our own body autonomy,
yep,
whether or not we get to read certain books,
yep.
whether or not we get to, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah. Okay.
So
So I
that's
agree
why I
with
think
you.
if
I
they are
agree.
strong in
Yeah,
society,
I
then
agree.
society will be influenced to go in very unhealthy ways.
Yep. I agree.
That's why I think there's utility in being opposition to that faction.
Agree. At the same time, also you can give all the attention you want in the world, but the trouble is there's nothing you can do to change some things. So the way I think
don't
about
believe
it is that you have to give them this time, you give them the space, give them the allowing awareness, so that they can grow out of that stage. Because there's no way you can change anything, any idea. So imagine when's the last time someone tried to change your belief, or when someone tried to change your behavior? Did anybody successful ever have done that with you? Or you just say, okay, Sam, whatever you want to do, go ahead, and then you have to go, you will grow out that stage. And the society is a big stage.
So yes, it has happened. And yes, I was open-minded to it. And yes, it took probably 2 or 3 years, and it's still in process. And this is a good friend of mine who says, hey, the language she uses is, let's say, download from the universe, we had shared past lives, and we had multiple shared past lives in history. And so I was open to it. I didn't immediately, deny it. I'm very open to whether or not that's actually true. I was looking for ways in which that might have been corroborated. So that went on for quite a while, and I'm still open to it. I'm not saying that's wrong. All I'm saying is, as long as someone is willing to have a reasonable conversation and engage and provide evidence and provide substantiation, I'm open to it. I don't just immediately say no.
Okay. And
It does happen. But on that particular front, I'm still not convinced, but I'm still open-minded.
when you say when you're not convinced, I got a question for you on that topic. When's the last time you were convinced about any topic, if I may?
I mean, a lot of things every day,
Okay.
I'm convinced whether or not.
So pick one yourself. You don't have to explain to me. Pick one yourself. So you have to have that convincing strategy, and you have to have a convincing parameters that meet all the criteria.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Unless that criteria is met. So you think a religion topic like that fuzzy logic, topic, how could that fuzzy logic be able to serve your logical, digital-minded set of parameters to be able to convince you? There's no way, Jose, because it's like you try to use a quantum computer to solve some 1 + 3. You can't do that because it's a fuzzy logic, man. It's like a boat. A boat doesn't follow, unless an airplane doesn't follow GPS at every turn because it's in the air. So how do you follow a GPS on like for the car, like the way that you want to make a right turn at a certain junction? It doesn't work that way. So analog, this is what I mean by religion is a fuzzy logic analog type of computer. You cannot compute. If you try to use like convincing, you never find it.
Okay, so in religion, what role does truth play?
There's nothing truth about that, because the truth that we have in the digital and the truth that in the fuzzy logic world are two different logic. That's why I say a GPS used by airplane and a GPS used by a car is two different GPS.
I don't think so. They're the same GPS,
No,
just used differently.
that's my point.
No. The
You
GPS
cannot make a
system is
right turn.
identical. The GPS system is still identical.
No. I call it different. If you don't believe me, just say hand the GPS for your car and give it to the pilot and see what he can fly with.
Well, okay, so I'm talking about the larger GPS system that's up,
That's my point.
flying around.
Yes, because our brain is the same. Our brain is the same, but we process it differently. That's why I keep going back about a digital computer and an analog computer. Okay, think of it like a record. Think of it like a record, right? A CD player, it's been digitized. It has some sampling rate. Whereas a record with the magnetic field, that's analog. You get a finest nanosecond calibration. You can do that, right? Because there's no sampling rate. It's much higher sampling rate in the neighborhood of 1,000 times, right? Think of it that way, right? And religion is a topic that using fuzzy logic, hope, pray. How do you digitize that? You cannot.
Yes, you can.
No, okay, give me one word in religion that you can digitize. That you can say, yes, this is 100% true, this is 100% right. I can scientifically prove it to you.
Okay, when we would go into this religious notion of morals.
Moral, okay, moral is a good topic. Perfect.
Exactly. So you can have 10 or 600 rules that make you a moral person.
Okay,
So you can have a rule like, don't kill your neighbor,
okay,
something like that. right?
okay. Don't kill your neighbor, provided the neighbor didn't kill your son.
Okay, but that's not analog.
Yeah, that's my point. You
That's
have
not
incomplete. This is what I keep telling you. It's incomplete. It's fuzzy logic. It's generalization. All generalization is a lie.
Correct. I'll go with you on that one. That
Okay.
doesn't mean it's analog.
So moral, even let's focus on moral. Don't go any other chain other word. How could you moral and digitize say, yes, this is do when you say this is immoral, then you feel it's such a generalization that it doesn't mean any meaning. It has no validity. It has no way to calibrate it. You have no way to digitize it.
I think you can.
Now, show me one way. I'd be love to. Okay, focus on this one. No, don't go anywhere else.
Let's do it. Okay. So let's say the morality that is intended by religion
Okay.
can be supplied without religion. In other words, I could arrive at this rule, don't kill your neighbor, completely from observing nature, completely from observing society, without any notion of God or spirituality or anything. If I just believe that, hey, that person's trying to live, that tree's trying to live, that dog's trying to live, and there's no positive outcome that's going to come for me killing that neighbor. Okay, we can actually arrive at such conclusions without a spiritual morality, without a religious morality, and that's 10 seconds, but could be elaborated much more.
I hate to tell this. First of all, the man of God can't even be moral. How many men of God do you know is moral? They all the way to the way that they define it.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, that's one problem. Number one, if the executioner cannot be, if the judge cannot live by the rule, the law of land, then the judge is not qualified to be the law of land or whatever you want to call that.
Okay, we'll pick up this topic later. Okay.
Okay.
No. I'm going to say, please make your point because
okay, make a point. So now the second thing is that behind every judgment that you make a decision on, there are so many stories, like you say, behind it, unless you can religiously, even we talk about lie. What's the definition of lie? It's like we talked about that, I think 2 weekends ago. Like, it's a topic of lying. It's usually to protect you or protect somebody else. Like, so would you define a lie as a lie when they're trying to protect something? So again, moral is the same thing. If you say moral, it's like depend on the person to execute it. So it's such a fuzzy logic that there's no way in hell that you can see it's like a clean cut digital computation, A plus 2 is, equal to A plus 2, whatever. It's very digital. There's nothing to argue about it because we can, how should I say? There's no story behind it. There's no evaluation based on subjective versus objective mindset versus the situational thing. And so think of it this way. think of it like just a simple one moral, right? So in Filipinos, they love to eat balut. You know what balut is, right? It's an egg that is almost hatched, and you can eat this chicken, the little chick that before is bring to life. It's like so it's like if you eat it, the eggs open up, you can see the feathers, and you eat that. So that's balut. It's called balut. Anyway, it's a delicacy, and you can go to any Filipino grocery shop. They'll sell that as it's the most yummy thing for them, right? But for me, I cannot handle that. Okay, so it's like, how could you it's like it's almost like cut open a baby that's 8.5 months pregnant and eat the baby. It's like, oh, you can't imagine that. So where the hell is moral comes in that situation? Like in one culture, as I say, in one culture is one value, and the other culture is another value. And the reason I bring this topic out is because perspective, value, all that is all over the map. There's no way on earth that say, okay, because I'm God, I decided moral, immoral. Because I'm from Israel or because I'm from Europe, I have one value. It's like, well, look, unfortunately, we have diversity, we have multiple perspectives, we have multiple values. So you can't even get the perspectives right. Alignment is like, am I run the computer on the PC or Mac? PC have one value, Mac have another value. I told my employee that don't use Mac for the VPN for Fortinet. He doesn't believe me. He spent about 30 hours last week just get the tweak it so that get the VPN working, almost working for the Mac. Like I said to him, it's like it's a second priority. In the old days, Photoshop. You want to get the Photoshop, you get the Mac version first, and then the PC version will come a few weeks later, right? If you have the PC version, you're not going to get the latest, you're not going to get the greatest. So if you want to draw Photoshop, use Photoshop, you better get a Mac version. I mean, and I know that it's very digital. But people that don't know that, why is it important to me to bring this up? Because when you're on a different platform, and a different mindset, different value, all those changes the meaning of moral. If you can't even get the meaning of moral to be defined, how could you even implement it or execute it or evaluate it or make a decision that's moral, immoral? You can't, because your basis on the evaluation is already.
So what's the problem with understanding the basics?
Well, I mean, look, I saw the other day was I say, if United States would to give up miles, or what do you call that, the miles versus kilometer thing, I saw somebody wear a t-shirt like, we have a mess. Oh, I think Barry did. He has a shirt on. It's like, if we convert to km, kilometer, we'll have a mess in United States or something along the line. When you try to convert someone to have, like, you have a moral standard that you live with because you are from Taiwan and all that stuff, you have Taiwanese base. But if I give you the mainland China, even like mainland China's moral standard, you will not be able to deal with it. Japan is very close to you, and if I use Japanese moral, that you will not take it. It's like, talk about Japan. Okay, let's say wife, you have to turn in all your money when you come home, give it to the wife so that she can manage it for you. So that's immoral. Like, unless you do that, you're immoral, because that's a wrong thing to do. So again, each word has so many evaluation based on the way you grew up, the way the planet, the community, and all that. Is what it belongs to depend on so many things that you have no control. You're not aware of. There's so many blind spots. I can go on and on with this. I can give you thousands of examples, because it's no way that you can pinpoint like 1 and 0 is 1 and 0. That's what I mean by digital, because if I give it to 10,000 people, they will say 1 is 1, 0 is 0. But if you say moral, you talk to 10,000 people, you get the data all over the map. Even if you give them a specific, like balut, that's a simple thing. Is it moral, immoral to eat the balut, the chicken egg that's almost hatched? 10,000 people will give you 10,000 different answers, and another 500 of them will give you a long story that you have no time to listen to.
So I have no difficulty with anything you say. However, the only part that I would like to elaborate on is that therefore we shouldn't even worry about it. See, that's the part
No,
that
no, 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 no. I'm never saying that. I never say that.
you
I
said don't
never
spend
say-
time on it.
No, I never say that.
What did you say exactly then? You
That's
say
what I'm saying. See, when you try to pinpoint me what I'm saying, that's a problem already, right there. It's like the GPS for
no,
the
I'm asking.
plane.
I'm asking.
I cannot say that. I cannot answer that question because there's no such thing. It's like a plane cannot make a right turn when you come to Houston. You cannot say, "Oh, make a right turn on Houston." No, you don't. It doesn't work that way. You try to use the scale of a digital, try to measure analogs. There's no sampling rate because it doesn't work that way. Does it make sense?
No, it doesn't, because
And
planes
that's what I'm
can make
saying.
right turns. Planes can make left turns.
Plane cannot make left turn. The way that the car make 90-degree, the wheels to the left and you stop and they make a left
Right.
turn.
There's no need to do a 90-degree in
That's what I
30
say.
yards,
It
right?
doesn't, you can
No,
slowly,
the car. A car doesn't either. A car does not make a 90-degree turn in zero space. It always takes about 30 yards or 50 yards.
make a left turn in, I don't know, 5 yards. I think 2 yards. You make a right turn in 2 yards.
All I'm saying is it takes some time for that vehicle
I
to
agree.
turn,
I
right?
agree.
Same
And
with the,
physically speaking, you need to follow the route. Otherwise, the GPS think that you're outside the range already, right? So if you try to make a right turn, you're walking, you drive into a traffic light or whatever. So maybe that's not a good example for me to use a GPS on a plane. So
it's
my
a good
point,
example. No, it is a good example, because you were trying to make a point, which I then said, well, I don't understand the premise of the point. The premise of the point is that two vehicles can't do the same thing. And I'm saying, well, yes, they really can. It's really the same system.
it's the same system, but it's a different language that you use. And make a right turn at Main Street, make a left turn on Main Street. It's like, you stay on this course, we have so many turns, and let's say between here and Massachusetts, there's so many turns that go along the way. And then with the plane, all it is 2 destinations between San Francisco and Boston. I don't care what you do. I don't care what it does. As long as you get to the only thing, you adjust your flight and mid-flight so that you're constantly adjusting. So your focus is your destination. Your focus is not about where to turn. And you might need to follow some flight path that you're not allowed to fly in, or some, they call that, highway in the air or something like that. So that's how the plane GPS works, which is very different than you need to make a turn, you need to pay attention to the road sign, you need to pay attention to the traffic and then turn or something like that. So there's 2 different systems. The reason I brought that up is because for the religion to work, you have to have faith. And the way you have faith is that you believe. So think of this way, you have 1,000 cells in your body. If you believe that you can do it, all your 1,000 cells are magnet, like you have all the forces pointing in one direction, north pointing magnet, right? That increase the rate of success. Whereas if you say, I don't believe it, I'm fighting it, I have doubt with it, now you don't have all the magnet pointing in the direction, you are half only the energy. And so you start doubting. When you're doubting, you're draining your energy. When you're doubting, you're sabotaging yourself. When you're doubting, you already have give the attention to something else that may happen. So,
but faith is not the only way to align all these trillion cells in your body.
that's right. I agree with you.
It's only
but it's
one way.
one of the many ways.
And how do you even know that faith acts that way? You choose to believe it.
That's
And
right.
you don't know it.
Well, people doesn't know it because they don't know the level of what meaning of the faith is. All it is, they know what to do, but then they don't know how to label it. So they might not know the word faith.
Yes, and it's possible without the word faith. I can say, I am 100% convinced that I choose to go to that location on my hike. All my trillion cells are motivated to go to that location on that hike, right?
Perfect.
And
Perfect.
I get that.
And
that's
perfect.
not called faith.
Perfect. That's right.
It's not called faith.
That's right. So it's that thing I want you to think of it. When you try to help your loved one to do something as in they are in dire danger, right? You do it because that's what you need to do. You have a compelling reason to save somebody's butt or save somebody's life or somebody get out somebody in trouble, right? You do it without thinking about the word faith, because faith is a meta word. You see, the reason you and I can talk about faith right now is because we're in a meta position. That's why I keep saying the religion is all of this is a meta perspective.
Okay, there's many aspects to it. Okay, so
Yeah.
the piece that allows the piece of religion that allows people to be quote unquote, and this is difficult, quote, better people or better person.
Yeah.
Okay, that part I have no issue with.
Right. Okay. Thank
The
you.
part of religion that tries to tell me how to be a better person,
Yep.
that I have a problem with. Not that they try. Okay, they're completely okay to have that conversation with me, but they also need to completely engage with me. Okay, so if I say I am going to, let's say, eat this hot dog, okay, and that person says, oh, don't eat meat, okay, we can have a conversation about that. But if that person now wants to penalize me for eating a hot dog, okay, that's a different issue. I don't go around actually I do, okay? I do want certain controls around what certain people can do with their influence. Because if it's not positive, if it's not productive for society, if it's not based on truth, if it's not based on evidence, then if it's harmful, I would like to understand it. And if I cannot understand it, I would like to minimize it. That's my only position here.
That's the reason why I use the word balut. Why do I use balut? As a moral question, almost hatch chicken egg, right? So, or egg, or goose egg, whatever that egg that belongs to. The bottom line is that, you see, this is what I mean. When the base unit of the discussion topic, it cannot be, like you have a value system that somebody else have a value system. For example, the hot dog cannot eat hot dog. So like, if it's a doctor, is a hot dog made in Taiwan versus hot dog made in US versus hot dog that make in some country that they put dead meat in that's poison or whatever. You don't know all that. So to give you an example, water, the simple water in India, holy water. I was convinced by someone to give me a drop of holy water in my hand. I had to put my hand in a special way and then I can scoop it in my hand. You know where the holy water come from? The holy water come from
the Indus River,
the most holy water river in the whole world, in India. And it gets so many multiple germs there. I was in diarrhea for 5 days. Why? They can handle it, but I cannot handle it. My body doesn't handle that. So physically speaking, moral, not just, it's a way that they survive because of their culture, because of background. So if you don't eat hot dog, you might die. But for somebody else, if they eat hot dog, they will die. So that kind of topic.
Yeah, perfect, right? So long as they're eating or not eating hot dogs or drinking or not drinking water in that society, as long as they're doing it and they're happy and they're not actually trying to influence other societies, I'm completely okay with that, right?
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So when your loved one is in the jail.
So when what?
Your loved one is being locked up in the jail.
Yep.
For them, it's okay with them. For you, it's not okay. You need to get them out. Example, it's an example. It's like, I want to be in the jail. You know why? Because I'm in jail. I won't do any bad things. I won't kill anybody. I'm safe. And, I got food. I'm not homeless, something along that lines, whatever I'm making things up. So that it's perfectly, I know of one of my friends, that son is in the jail, say Sam is the best thing for him. I'm scratching my head, like, what the hell does that mean? It's like, so I have to change my value system now after I listen to him. It's like, okay, fine. So I'm allowing him to be in the jail. If it's my own son in the jail, what do you think? I say, how could you be in the jail? You don't have a life. You need to get out of it. So again, we are imposing our value into somebody else. Why? Because we believe in it. It's bad for them. It's like if you see somebody eating dirt in front of you, if it's your own daughter, at 3 years old eating dirt, you don't tell me that you wouldn't stop her. You won't tell me that it's okay, honey, go ahead and eat more dirt. You don't, because you love them so much that you want to change their behavior so that it meets your value system. I mean, I don't know how to put
This
it
is a
that
great
way.
example. This is a great example, right? Because you as a parent have more knowledge about health,
Right.
anatomy, and metabolism
Right.
than a little child,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
Because you've gained that knowledge through education, through life, through eating dirt,
Yep.
whatever the reason is. Okay.
Yep.
So there, you're actually trying to help that child grow and prosper and be healthy and whatever. Right?
Yep.
Now, with other societies and other religions, are they trying to help my society grow and prosper and become
Yep.
more healthy and
Yep.
whatever?
Yep.
That's the question.
They are. Of course they are. How?
No. Wait.
Look at this
If they
way.
believe they are, I completely accept that. But if they are not willing to engage in a discussion on that, then that's where I stop. Okay. See, if I'm saying, okay, Sharia law, I should go and stone that 14-year-old girl. Okay. They say that's making society better. And if I say, well, let's have a conversation on that. If they're not willing to have a conversation on that, then I reject that practice because they cannot or will not support it.
How do you have a discussion with your 3-year-old girl that eating the?
I can say this is not going to make you healthy.
So she said, no, I want to eat it, Daddy.
Okay, I'll let them try once.
What about she want to try for the rest of her life?
Then I will admit that, hey, I can't help her, but you know, if that's
Same
what she wants.
situation. Same situation. This compliance spot.
No, it's not compliance, because if I want to live my own life and somebody wants to impose Sharia
See,
law,
that's your value. Again, I want you to pinpoint it. That's your value, my dear.
correct. And I
So
want
you
to have
cannot impose your value
conversations
upon
with
them
value.
because they're executing their value.
No.
You-
I'm not excluding. I want to have those conversations about these values.
Having a conversation is a value system.
Sure, of course.
Okay, so how could you impose that value, having a discussion value system imposed on a 3-year-old? Because she won't buy it. Her value is that I want to do whatever I want to do. It's fun.
Okay, you do know, of course, there's this distinction between child and adult. Okay,
That's my point. For them, when they are the God man or the God woman, they believe that they are the enlightened one, they are the one that's safe. So let me say this to you. You may not believe it. Have you heard of like someone is baptizing someone when you pass away? Let's say you pass away and your daughter will baptize you. Daddy, my daddy didn't have a chance to baptize when he's alive, so now I'm going to baptize you. Do you know about that?
yeah, Mormons do it all the time, right?
Yeah. My point is, like, how do you argue with a dead person? You just impose on them. Let's have a discussion, my dear. Where the hell is the discussion?
That person no longer exists. That person no longer responds.
It's not true. How do you know that?
How do you know it is true?
Well, again, that's my point. That's called fuzzy logic. I keep going back.
it's not.
I'm going to remind you
By
that
any metric, you can actually define life. You can define what living looks
that's
like.
your value system. That's your
I'm
calibration
willing to
system.
adopt yours. What is life? What indicates a living being versus a dead one?
I understand that. See, that's your value system arguing with my value system. Did you notice that?
It's not arguing. It's
Again, I call it arguing because that's my way of putting the word. Like arguing means that I disagree, you disagree, and you're not taking my point. You want to make my point, your point stronger than my point. That's arguing.
No, that's not what I'm doing. I'm trying to understand the way you think. That's
Okay.
very different than trying to get you to think differently.
I say that when you pass away, you still have a spirit. You still have a life. That's what the way the religion think. Okay. And that's why there is a need to baptize you. So if you say that after you pass away, you don't have a life, you're no longer alive, why the hell you need to baptize this person that the person have no longer exists? That's a conflict of discussion here.
But am I not allowed to ask questions about that?
It's not that you're not allowed. When you deny that basic facts, like, so when someone pass away, I'm just focused on this topic here. When someone passes away, it doesn't exist. That's not what the value system of the religion is. When you pass away, you're still alive and you're still with, and you need to be with God, So I'm going to take your spirit and baptize you. And then your argument or whatever you want to call it, your value system or your standpoint is that when you pass away, you die. Whatever I do to you is fine. You're like, no. Then you're already violating the basic recognition of that nobody die, you're still with us, you're with God, not just with us. That kind of.
I'm willing to understand how you or anyone else thinks. So even though I may not understand that notion of life, I'm willing to go with your notion of life.
No, I'm not saying it's my value of life. All I'm saying is that their assumption is why I bring out the word baptize you when you pass away. And remember, we talk about 3-year-old daughter, you have a discussion. I need my value system, your value system is I need to have let's have a discussion before we can do this to you. And I say that in the baptized situation, there's no discussion. And you say that's when you pass away, there's no life. The definition of life is so and so and so. I say, well, the basic assumption of the religion is that you never die because, that's why we need to baptize you. Otherwise, what's the point of baptizing a non-object or non-existent something?
Okay, pre-baptism, post-baptism, pre-life, post-life. Is there any difference that baptism event makes in anyone's life? I'm asking. I'm not trying to be.
Okay, so you're telling me that if when you pass away, someone baptized you of some voodoo religion or whatever that is, you're okay with that, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's against your belief system that whenever someone do something.
No, that's consistent with my belief system.
Consistent? How do you consistent? Because
if I no longer exist, whatever they do affects me in the least, not in the least.
Beautiful. That's your belief system. Does everybody else have that belief? That's the question.
Clearly not. That's why I'm willing to have this conversation.
That's right. So when your value system is different from other value system, how could you impose the same value system that you have?
I'm not imposing. I'm trying to understand. It's
okay. I'm not saying the reason I'm using the word impose is that the way you understand is that so that I can accept it.
No, I understand. No, so that I can understand the way you or anyone else believes or thinks. That's what I'm trying to do.
There's nothing to understand. There's nothing to.
If there's nothing to understand, then why do you believe it?
I don't believe it.
Okay, but somebody else does.
Well, I say I don't believe it, meaning I need to be clarified on that. I don't believe it's that I don't believe it's wrong or right because it is what it is. They want to believe in it. Be my guest. As long as they don't affect my life, it doesn't affect my well-being. It doesn't love my.
That's exactly my position. That's exactly my position. But further than that, I am curious. I'd like to understand why you or 10 or 20 or 10 million people believe a certain thing. Okay, that's a curiousness. It's an inquisitiveness. That's why I'm trying to understand, because maybe that has value that my life could benefit from. I'm trying to figure out, maybe I could learn from you. That's the purpose of asking.
Thank you. Right. So this is what I realized this morning before I talked to you. So about how people meet each other instead of shaking hand or hugging or they have a kiss on the cheek. I was like, okay, I wonder what's the kiss on the cheek, one side or two-sided, and who need to do first and what's all that. There's a tool right now. We can ask ChatGPT or bot or whatever to get that. So it can bring back to memories of when I was a teenager. I read the encyclopedia from A to Z, and I love it. The trouble is that I don't do that after my high school, right? Because I don't have the time, I don't have the luxury. I need to study for my college and then make a living and working damn hard and all that stuff. I lost that. So I was like, okay, now I have my encyclopedia beyond the encyclopedia that I have. I can now ask questions, be curious, find out exactly what's going on, because I always want to know more than what I ever need. I always try to, when I study something, I want to buy 10 books about that subject and spend all my pocket money. I don't travel because I spend all my travel money buying books and get all the whatever classes or whatever. So this is the way I am. And I'm the same boat with you. I love to learn more. I want to find more. There's a lot of answer I cannot answer you because I'm not good enough yet to answer your question the way that you
are good enough. See, exactly the way you are means that you exactly think certain things and you exactly believe certain things.
Yeah.
So it is the perfect time to ask you. Okay. Not after you study 10 more books, not after you go, travel 1,000 more miles. This is the only perfect time because you
Yeah.
believe certain things that I don't, and I'm curious.
No, basically the key really is think of it this way. It's like the way I think about it is like a needle. I have to thread the needle to go through the hole, right? That's the way that we live our life. Everything is logic, productive. We can measure the result. With the religious world, as long as you food good, as long as you believe in it, you're good enough. That the needle didn't have to go through the hole.
Even if you're molesting children, even if you're
Yeah.
allowing people to go hungry,
Yeah.
even if you're taking tens of billions of dollars from regular
Yeah.
people and giving it to somebody who's actually just amassing wealth without helping people.
Again, you're using.
Yes, I am using, but I'm asking, I'm not imposing.
You can't even, how they're circumcised, right? They're circumcised men and they're circumcised women, right? You know about that, right?
That's genital mutilation, yes.
Yeah, that's right. For them, it's the right thing to do. What do you think they like to do? The son and the daughter doing that being
That is easy to argue. That is easy to argue.
but still getting done today. It's still happening.
Clearly, I would say if you have a discussion on it about health, about society, about rights, about body autonomy on all fronts, you could probably make the case to reasonable people that this is a wrong practice.
Right.
Okay. Now, the people that are willing to do this are not engaging on whether this is good or bad or reasonable. They're just doing it. Why? Because they were taught to do it.
Yeah.
That is stupidity, almost the very definition of stupidity. Okay. And I do agree to a point, it's useless to talk to stupid people. It is.
The stupid people are the one that are harming you most than the non-stupid people.
Therefore, we must find a solution so that that harmful behavior is not persistent. We have to find that solution. And we have to find that solution as a society. I'm not going to do it with that individual because that individual, more likely than not, is not going to engage with me. Just like somebody who's going to, go out, get a pickup and just shoot a black person walking down the street, they're not going to talk to me. We have to solve this as a society.
I guess from my perspective, after you say that, I'm thinking about, okay, what can I do or what can you do in such a way that we can guide them? I call it shine a light on them and enlighten them and educate them.
Asking the questions. The questions are the light. Posting questions are a way of shining light.
I understand. So the question is, how do you shine a light in such a way that, and what I noticed is that you can only lead someone in the step 1 to step 2. You cannot lead them from step 1 to step 10. So we have to be gentle. We have to be understanding. We have the acceptance, and we have the engaging. And this is why I call pace and lead. You got to live with them. You got to stay with them. You got to believe them. You got to accept their belief system before you can do anything about it. And that takes a lot of energy. It takes a lot of.
Agree. But the point at which that begins to be non-productive is if they stop engaging. I will continue to engage, and I've proven this, as long as someone's willing to engage.
Well, if you're waiting for someone to willing to engage, there'll be less than 10 people, I guess, or something along that line.
And isn't that a problem?
Now, I'm saying it's not a problem. It's like throwing the starfish into the ocean. I saved this one. Like how that's it. I have no problem with that. But I'm more ambitious. I'm more like, how can I send at least 10,000 or 10 million people? And that's the reason why I'm teaching a mastermind class and all that stuff. And you know that, right? So
right. But I'm also starting with where I can start. I'm a little hummingbird. I'm a little person trying to save a starfish. Okay, I'm doing what I can. And I'm trying to be more effective, but I know that at least in certain cases, I can work on an individual basis.
Right. Okay. I mean, individuals is your base unit, baseline, right?
Yes.
You get that established.
You can't help one individual. How can you help 10 or 20?
I agree. I totally agree with you on that. Yeah. So the question is, how effective have been, and what's the feedback system you're using? How could you, be able to, expand on your influence?
Always sufficient feedback if one is looking for feedback. If one is receptive to feedback, there is always feedback. If one is not receptive to feedback, then one can believe whatever one chooses.
Okay, how can I help you?
I'd like to know what happens in your world religion organization, the one that you have brought up that you're active in.
Yeah.
What conversation happens there around harmful behavior?
It's all about education, right? So we talk about, so one of the class we give is like, how do you have a peaceful conversation between two religions? So, one is religion A, the other one is religion B. So you cannot say that I have only God, my God is the best God, or my God is the only God. That kind of language is, we call it primary language, which is you create conflict. So you go up one level, meta language. So it's like, we talk about, so basically you go up to the next level. It's like, okay, my source or whatever you call it, you use a language that you don't want to get into, how may I say, you don't want to use a language that's, some people use the word trigger word, it's like, this is mine, that's yours. Okay, so I'm sure you know about, if you write an email that's full of fire, this is how I do it. It's like you write all your words you want to do, and then you go in the next revision is you take out all the I and you, depersonalize it. So like that. So those are the things that we teach, and we have many classes for how do you have peace, and how the more I understand. So for example, Israelis family will invite Palestinian kids to come and stay with them for the summer, exchange students, something like that. So those are activities. They have also, you can create something called cooperation circle. Cooperation circle is 7 people. The requirement is 7 people with 3 different religions. If so, you have 3 different religions in that group of 7, then that unit of, think of that, you gain 1 vote. You now entitled, now you're the authorized, or you're the, the fulfill that cooperation criteria. Now you can do whatever you want, and the team will support you in whatever you're doing. For example, some of them will be vegetarian, you promote vegetarian, some of it for you will be promoting whatever. So now then your whatever activity you have, you get being published to the thousands of, millions of members that we have. They'll say, okay, if they can contribute, they can add, they want to join you, whatever it is. So now you are the contributing member. The one member is one cooperation circle. So again, you can go, you look at the website to look to find out more about it. It's uri.org. URI, let me type it for you. URI.org. And next time I have an email, I'll forward the email to you so you can see the activities going on. We don't talk about religion, we don't talk about belief, we don't talk about moral. We talk about educating basic survival needs, basic, how could you do good in the day-to-day lives. The way I believe is that the more I get to know you, the more I get to know you, the less I will likely to harm you. The more that you and I depend on each other, the less likely that we'll harm each other. That's, to me, that's the step 1 instead of step 100 or step 50, whatever that is. So focusing on, how can we help each other? How can we be beneficial to each other? How can we help each other to survive better, to go through our hard time together?
It sounds like a good way to become neighborly when we're not actually physical neighbors.
Yep. For example, I was in Brazil, and there was a little group that they were having all kinds of discussion, and they were having all kinds of, so I figure out what they want. What they want is actually selling things on internet. So I put them aside, about 10 people. I have an interpreter that speaks Spanish. There's a Latin America group, Peru, Argentina, Chile, all that stuff. So they get together. So I spend 3 or 4 hours teaching them, telling them what was so and all that, and they all love me to death. So like, okay, so do we talk about religion? No. Do we talk about God? No. Do we talk about moral? No. It's all about survival. How could I make you survive better? How could I improve your life?
That's excellent. Is there a rule that you cannot talk about religion or that you cannot
No.
talk about God?
When the topic come up, I will be able to talk to them about it, like you and I talking right now. Any topic at all, I'm the the way I think about it is that the more you try to resist it, the more you will persist. So why bother? I always take on hot problem.
I actually think that's fine. If my questioning makes their position persist, I see no problem with that. Because if I didn't question, it would persist anyway. So I don't see any downside. The only possible upside is I might understand better. I might improve my perspective if
Yeah.
I ask. I'm
Yeah.
not denying, I ask.
I will tell you when I don't know what I'm talking about. All I tell you is that I'll just have a
Me too. I don't
like
know
a
what
dump
balut
truck.
is.
Yeah, I have no idea what I'm talking about. All I know is that this is what I call collective consciousness. So all my garbage come from collective garbage. Garbage in, garbage out. Until we find what is the right thing to say. So I'm all good for
Yeah, I
that.
think those URI conversations lead first to mutual trust because they're seeing that you're helping, they're seeing that you want to assist on the immediate problem that they first brought to you.
Yep.
That establishes some level of trust.
Yep.
After some amount of time, they're probably more curious about you.
Yeah.
That would be natural, right?
Yep.
It's
Yep.
it's probably unnatural to say, I'm going to accept help from Sam Chan and he's going to help me start this business. And that's all I'm going to do with Sam Chan. I'm not interested in how he might help me next week or next month or next year. I'm curious to know what he could do for me next year or more what I could do for Sam since he helped me last week. That would be human. That would be natural.
Yeah.
Okay. So that first step of trust expands to other possibilities. I see that would happen. At some point, they'll say something like, hey, Sam, why are you doing this? That would be an interesting conversation. I'm assuming that didn't happen yet. Maybe it did. Okay. But at some point, they'll say, hey, Sam, how come you're helping me?
Well,
Or in the
if I can
context of, hey, Sam, I appreciate your help so much. I would like to help you. In what way could I help you? Right. Those conversations would expand.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let me interrupt myself there and say, hey, Barry, hey, Josh.
Apologize. I was sitting, I fell asleep.
It's good. I'm so good. You guys
You're
good
allowed to
rest.
fall asleep, Barry.
I'm allowed to fall asleep. I do it all the time. Unfortunately, it was D&D last night, and I always sleep erratically. But I ended up getting up early to, like 4 o'clock. So I got up with like, I don't know, 3 hours sleep. And then I'm sitting here and I fell asleep.
Yeah, I assume that you tried joining with the old link, the one without the passcode.
No, what happened is that when I woke up, I looked at my clock right there and it says, it's 10 minutes to 12. And I had already set up the messenger window on this monitor. So I saw that and I saw I was late, but this monitor takes a long time to warm up. It's got a glitch in it. It takes like 5 minutes to warm up. So I had to wait for it to warm up. I need to change the capacitors in this monitor. They leak. And I have the capacitors, but I'm afraid to take it apart. Thought I would wait until it really failed in case I screwed it up when I disassembled it. So I've been living with just let it warm up, let the capacitors leak, and after 5 minutes it'll stay. I'm too cheap to buy a new monitor. Actually, I have another one here, but I just don't want to rearrange it.
Welcome.
Sorry. So I was going to say that I would be very surprised if Stacy was here this morning. I don't know if you discussed whether she would show up or not, but I didn't think so because I think she was also up last night. I was chatting with her earlier last night. And I think also she was, because when I woke up this morning, she was also on 4 o'clock in the morning. So I thought she
Night owl.
fall asleep or something. I don't know.
It's all good.
We'll talk about it later when the recording's off.
Mhm.
The people who I play D&D with, one of the guys who is sometimes the D&D, he gets into these melee battles, which I can't stand. And then they go on till 1 o'clock in the morning. And then I get home at 1:30 or something, and and then my sleep schedule is completely screwed up, and my body wants to wake up at 5 a.m. because that was the sleep schedule I was on, is waking up at dawn. Friday night screws it up if we have a long running D&D session. Why am I kvetching? You don't even care about. Why would you even care about that?
You're checking in, Barry.
I'm checking in. Yeah, I'll have a check in, but first of all, I got to get out of my grog. I probably sound groggy. I'm just sitting here like totally fall asleep, and I forgot to set the stupid alarm, which I try to remember to do so that I just don't lose track of time.
That gives us an opportunity for me. Sam and Sam are talking for a while.
I'm glad that somebody else showed up to talk to you, Sam, because for a minute there, I was afraid that you're just sitting there with nobody. Because I don't sometimes.
There's nothing wrong with that either. Okay.
Well, I know, Sam, that sometimes you have a conflict and you can't always be here.
Yeah, like I'll check in also. Gail had a big accident in the middle of March 23rd. And so her SUV has been in the shop. She just got it back like a week or so ago. But on March 23rd, she had snow tires still on. Now she's got it back. Now we got to go get the snow tires switched out today. So that's what I got to go do later today.
All right. So I'm afraid at least for me, it's kind of an abbreviated session. And I'm sort of out to lunch at the moment.
You're welcome to take it whatever direction you want. Sam and I have been talking about one of my focus areas these days, which is it's actually hard to even name, but I'll say it's about this tension between reason and religion. So I'll just leave it at that.
Well, religion was deep reasoning when it first got started. I mean,
I accept that completely.
Buddha had this fabulous theory of attachment as the root of desire is the root of all attachment. I think that's how he put it. Great insight, a huge insight. They were trying to overthrow the rule of law. The rule of law was really miserable. It was bloody. It was violent. It was the Hammurabi Code. 30% of the laws had the death penalty on it, and it's completely obvious to me. I mean, the evidence is plain as day that they were trying to invent an ethical code of behavior that didn't need the rule of law, and they failed because people just couldn't somehow think that. I mean, ethical reasoning is too fucking hard. It's just hard. Even though as teenagers, Rabbi Kripke taught us ethical reasoning. I mean, he didn't teach it, but we had workshops. He'd give us these ethical dilemmas every single week. We'd sit there for an hour and a half every Thursday afternoon after school and work through ethical dilemmas. And I loved them. But my God, there were, I don't know, 12 of us, my peers, and that was it. I graduated in a class of, I don't know, 400 of my peer, and 12 of us took Rabbi Kripke's course in ethics when we were teenagers. And I thought, my God, if it wasn't for that, I never would have learned deep reasoning. That was all deep reasoning. And when I did it with the youngsters back 30 years ago, they loved it too. There was another group of teenagers I basically played exactly the same role. We didn't always do ethical dilemmas. We would just do some kind of thinking exercise, didn't have to be ethical. And the kids loved it. And I thought, wow, I'm almost as good as Rabbi Kripke was in this little adolescent seminar. Throw out something to chew on, and these kids will chew on it. And I'll ask a carefully crafted question, if they start to wander. And I get to be, an adult, and I go, holy shit, the adults around me don't know how to think. I go to Bell Labs, and they give me these problems, and they keep giving me the problems that nobody knows how to solve. The whole point is that Bell Labs would get a problem that there's no algorithm, nobody knows, it's never been solved. And the people at AT&T would say, give this one to Barry, give this one to Barry, And I never really, at the time, understood why they were picking me out. Now I realize I could reason through a problem from scratch where there was nothing in the back of the book. The back of the book did have the book itself, the back, forget it. This was a novel problem every single time. And it'd take months. It would take a year to solve one problem because I'm a slow thinker. And I realized Barack Obama was a good thinker. He was a systems thinker. There are a few, Robert Reich, how do you say his name? Robert Reich. There are system thinkers out there. It's not like there's none of us, but my God, what are we, a fraction of a percent? That's not going to work. And Anne-Marie thought, if we got up to 10% of the population, systems thinkers, just if we got to 10%, it would be a machaya. We would solve the world's problems, because that's the sort of the tipping point. I thought if you got to 25% of the people who knew how to think, and the other 75% were random, 25% were going the wrong way, 25% were going sideways, 25% were accidentally going the right way, and 25% knew exactly what they were doing, then you'd have 50% going the right way. 25% at random, 25% against you, and 25% sliding sideways. And Anne-Marie said, no, you don't really need to get to 50% people, half of them accidentally coming up with the right answer. 10% knowing what they're doing, she says, is good enough. You would fix the world's problem, but we're only around 1%.
Yeah, that's what critical mass is 10%, I believe. That's what was told.
Where did you get that number from? Do you know?
I have no idea. I just remember because
I think Anne-Marie is right that if you had 10% who systematically reason deeply, as a practice all the time,
right,
that might be enough. But look at we got people like DeSantis and Trump and others being elected to high office. Good grief. Sorry, Sam, I'm boring you, aren't I?
No, it's good. It's good. I was dying to know, how do you know what? Let me put it this way: what's the most something that you're so proud of that you were doing deep reasoning and was so proud of that? And it's a small example, not too big, that you can.
Well, when I started up Micromuse, that online learning community in the 90s, and I actually got a community of about, I don't know, about 50 active participants, most of which were adolescents. And we really had a fabulous learning community. It was nonviolent learning community. That was all text, by the way. There's no video, no graphics, it was just text. I was very proud of that demonstration project because it was zero cost. I was using this basically junk computers then, as I use junk computers now. There were no fees. It was voluntary participation. Anybody could join as long as they agreed to abide by the terms of the social contract. And the social contract was created by the founding group of people, and it could modify, but it was not, I didn't have to be a policeman. And I was very proud of that activity. Its heyday lasted about 6 years. And then the World Wide Web came along with the browsers and went commercial in the second half of the 90s. And this text-based MUDs basically kind of fell by the wayside. They still exist. It's just that they're now initial. Look who's here. I didn't know that. Stacy, I fell asleep for an hour before this. I
So-
only finally connected because I was sitting here and I fell asleep. And I go, I bet Stacy's going to fall asleep too.
I fell asleep for about 40 minutes.
There you go. Same deal.
I lost track of time. Well, I expected that.
Same
But
deal.
but wait, there's more. I couldn't get in to the Zoom.
Yeah.
So one thing I found out just now is that I had Jerry take some of the money that I had earned last year and pay for my Zoom account. And I see that it's expired. So that could have been part of the problem.
No.
The other thing is, and my buzzers here are, they're very jolting. It's an old, an older building. So it's, so I had worked it out with somebody because he doesn't have a phone. So he can't check in on me or get me something. I worked it out that he comes at a certain time and ring the buzzer, and I would tell him if I need anything. That dialogue wasn't going well because it's an old buzzer, and you have to, first you press listen, then you have to press talk. And then I finally realized you got to do listen and talk, but then I wasn't sure, maybe that cancels out everything. So then I did it again like that. So then I said, well, tried to get on again. Still couldn't get on. I said, I could use a break. Maybe I'm just not supposed to go on yet. So then I needed to get something for my car. I'm a little nervous to go out because I know of 3 incidents that happened so far where there could have been possible miscommunications. One with you and Eric and my mother that I told you, you and I spoke about. One with Jack Park, who I had observed a message thread in the Mattermost in one of the channels that I guess I have README access to, but I'm not allowed. I mean, I was able to post a message there, but when he responded, maybe it was on his end. Maybe he was, I have no idea how that, there was a disconnect there. So then he emailed me saying, I don't know what you're talking about. So I had to write a whole very coherent, slow letter to him, which was fine because I was relaxing all morning. I had a wonderful day. So anyway, so then I looked out my window because somebody was supposed to clean my car last night. I wanted to just make sure everything was good in the area. And so I was a little bit afraid to go out because I have some traumatic memories associated with being so close to my dreams and then having the big bad wolf eat me up. So I went upstairs and I said, you're a big girl, you can do this, you got this. And I put on some undergarments, which is always good to go inside. And I put on sunglasses because who knows what I look like. I've been up since 4 in the morning. What else? I walked down the stairs, 2 flights of stairs. I looked both ways. I made a left to the mailbox with my keys in my hand because if somebody were going to come, I could say, oh, I just came down to get the mail. Got the mail, opened the door. Poked my head outside, looked around, saw a kid with red garments walking by, felt safe. I joined in the flow, went in around, stopped at my car, surveyed everything, got what I needed, came inside, said, let me try again. And here I am.
Yeah, you and I both woke up at 4 a.m. because I saw you were on at 4 a.m. and I go, has Stacy been up all night or did she just wake up?
No. I seem to be sleeping, I would say 3 hours at a time. It seems to go like 3 hours, which is really comfortable for me. I really like that flow a lot. It's perfect. 3, 3. Yeah, I like it.
Yeah. So anyway, so you and I both connect almost at the same time, an hour later. So, and I'm not, I mean, because I was sleeping from, I don't know, from around 9:30 to 11, no, 9:30 to 12, whatever. I did have breakfast and I did have a cup of coffee because I was up so early. I actually had breakfast. And
Oh, I have coffee in the pot waiting for me. I just drank a little bit. What did I eat? I had an orange.
So, yeah. So anyhow, so Sam Chan was asking me, I think the question was, what work did I do that I was most proud of? And I think that was your question. And
Yeah,
I
I'm basically trying to figure out how do you run your logic on your deep reasoning. I mean, I'm more interested, like, let me put it this way, come down to the chase of it, is that how do you differentiate being deep reasoning or deep hallucination?
Oh, that's a different question than I thought you were asking.
Wait, hallucination, flag. Can we find a
I
better
was going to
word?
go there by one little step at a time, but since you will get, I'm just giving you the meta outcome that I was looking
The other
for.
word is confabulation, which is actually,
I like that.
confabulation is where your memory is a little spotty. Because you
Okay.
don't remember the details, and you fill in the details as if you had them correct, but often when you fill in the missing details, you get them wrong. That you'd have to go back and check your notes if you have any notes.
Okay.
And if I try to
Yeah.
remember what we talked about last week, it'll turn out that my memory, I'm filling in parts that I'm guessing. And if I actually watch the video from 2 weeks ago, I'll say, oh, I remembered that. I didn't remember that completely correctly. That's confabulation.
The other reason that's good is that it's like a flag that you got to go back and redefine it. So it's like putting a pin in it and we'll come back and revisit it. And now we can
Right,
continue on.
Yeah, hallucinations that never happen at all. Confabulation is you fill in incorrect details. I see Sam just put his hand up. I'm gonna stop talking here. I'm rambling, sorry.
You are, and you were answering two people's questions at once. That was great.
Sam, you have your hand up. Did you know that?
I do. I was waiting to be able to ask the question.
Go ahead.
I believe, if I recall correctly, that Sam Chan asked you the question prior to people checking in. What were you most proud of as an application or instance of deep reasoning?
That's what I thought I was answering.
Yep.
Which is
Oh,
not
you
the
were being
same
interrupted.
as what Sam Chan repeated as the question. It's not the same question. So what I was most proud of first was the Micromuse online learning pioneering project in the 90s, which, as I was saying, ran until the World Wide Web advent and the commercialization advent in the late 90s. And that kind of made us no longer the frontier activity that everybody would prefer to do, because it was the frontier and it wasn't the frontier anymore. So then the next thing that happened is, and I may have told the basic part of the story before, but in 1985, I was having a failed marriage. I was only been married for like not even 9 months, not less than a year. But the woman I've married was a first grade teacher. And I said, now you're not teaching because we just got married and you're not living in the same town. Why don't you go back to the local community college and get a master's in education, so that if and when you want to resume your career, you have a master's. And it's a perfect opportunity here. The kids are not, well, the youngest daughter was not yet in kindergarten, I think. And the oldest one was in, I don't know, 6th grade or something. I mean, 1st grade or something. So she went back to the local community college to get a master's, and she had to take a course called Statistics and Education. And chapter 4 was called Hypothesis Testing. And she was completely, I don't even know the right word. I mean, talk about math anxiety. Imagine math anxiety beyond anything you've ever seen. So I've been tutoring science and math since I was a kid. So it was second nature. So I was tutoring her, not tutoring, but mentoring her. And we were working on the very first homework problem in Statistics for Education, the problem at the chapter, at the end of the book, end of the chapter. Didn't go here this morning. And I was using the Socratic method because you never want to give them the answer, right? You want to get them to construct the answer. So I'm step by step, asking her, tiny little questions, step by step, because the big steps aren't working. And I have to tell you that she had genetically inherited dyslexia, ran in their family. So using the Socratic method, she has a breakthrough in understanding how to think about this particular homework problem. And when she has the breakthrough, thanks to the Socratic method technique, she goes from always being in a very distressed and angry affective state almost all the time. She has this great epiphany, and she's screaming when she has this insight. She's screaming, this seems to be a very important idea. I'm not going to try to do the screaming because
You want me to do it, Barry? You want to role play, Barry? I could do this one. Put me in, coach.
so I was astonished, number one, how fundamental was the insight having to do with, if you see two things that are correlated, one could be the cause, the other could be the effect, or the other way around. One could be, they could be cause and effect related with the arrow going this way or that way. It could just be a coincidence, or there could be something the night before and knowing the answer causes both. They could have an underlying common cause. One could be the cause of the other, or it could be a coincidence. And you have to draw the arrow of causality, whichever way makes sense, and confirm it. That's your basic thing. Two things seem to be correlated. How do you draw the arrow of cause and effect, if there is one? And then you look for the evidence to nail down that there's an arrow of causality somewhere in these, relationship. Well, that's very fundamental in science. If you see two things that are coming, appearing together, you want to figure out where's the cause and effect model. So it occurred to me that because of dyslexia, this arrowhead of causality, she had associations were fine, but no arrowheads on them. And I go, how the devil can you think if you don't have the correctly pointing arrowheads of causality among all the things that are related, that are seem to be connected, associated, but not necessary? So I go, my God, you can't do inductive reasoning. You can't do deductive reasoning. I mean, how the hell can you think if you don't have a mental model that shows you which way to draw the arrows of causality among all the parts in the model? But in getting that missing piece of model-based reasoning, I saw that her emotional state went from anger and distress all the time to the very first time I saw a positive valence emotion. I thought, my God, I know about learning. I've been living in the education community my whole life. I know about emotions. I see people have emotions all the time. How come I never noticed this cause and effect relationship between learning and emotions? I thought, I took Psych 101. It wasn't in there, was it? So I spent the next, let's say about a year trying to figure out what is the mathematical structure of the relationship between emotions and learning that I never learned. And that's not in the textbooks. And I began to develop this theory or this model of the interplay of emotions and learning. This is in the middle of the 1980s. But it takes 15 years before any of my academic colleagues think that I'm onto something substantive here. And a friend of mine who was a grammar school teacher, also in Massachusetts, he ran the little computer room there. He said he had just gotten his EDD degree at UMass Amherst. And he said to me, he said, Barry, he says, you always have these great ideas. I want to learn how to write a grant. And I want to pick your brain for an idea to write a grant, just for practice, because nobody ever gets their first grant. So I give him a dump of a bunch of things that we could talk about, including this emotions and learning thing that I'm working on. And he says, you never get your first grant. It's always just for practice. But he says, that work is so far over the horizon that it's never going to get funded anyway. But it would be a good exercise to learn to write the grant. And I recruit my friend who is at MIT, professor at MIT, who's doing pattern recognition, something or other. I forget exactly what she was working on. And she agrees to add her name, because you have to have a faculty member to write a grant for the National Science Foundation. So she signs on. Oh, I should tell you, because I was talking about this emotions learning stuff to her, because she's local, I knew her husband before she got married to him. She said, she's the one who said to me, Barry, she says, this cannot be a novel theory. This has got to be in the literature. I said, Roz, I've looked and looked and looked. I can't find it. She says, you're not looking hard enough. She says, I'm going to look. So she does a literature survey in 1995 on, is there anything in literature on this relationship of emotions and learning? She finds next to nothing. But she writes up her literature survey in like a 2 or 3 page, very short paper with just everything that she could find that was at all related. And she says, this whole field doesn't seem to exist. And she coins the name of it, affective computing. Comes up with a name for it and says, yeah, Barry's right. There's a next to nothing in literature. But she's at least done some homework. A year later, she says, you know that little survey paper I did because you didn't do your homework? I said, yeah, sure, I know it. She says, I'm going to turn that into a book. In 1997, she writes a textbook, the very first one ever, on affective computing. And there's one page in that book about emotions and learning, as part of the whole gestalt of affective computing. And so in 1999 is when my friend, who's the grammar school teacher, wants to learn to write a grant, and Roz signs on. And son of a gun, we get the grant.
This one.
And so we do the project, and the very first peer-reviewed paper that the three of us write, Roz and my friend Rob Riley, who teaches in a public school, and we write the very first, and all we do is we simply lay out the theory, the mathematical model that the first derivative of knowledge is called learning. It's the rate of gaining ground of knowledge. And the second, this is the key thing, and the second derivative, the curvature of the learning curve, we experience that as emotions. I define the second, I claim the second derivative, the curvy wiggles of the learning curve show up as emotions, and I give the little model. And that's the very first peer-reviewed paper. And I go to the conference in Madison, Wisconsin, and I present the paper. And at the dinner, the third night, the closing night, they call my name during dessert. I'm not even listening. I'm talking to this little lovely young lady I'm having dinner with that I met there. She says, Barry, she says, shut up. I said, what? She says, they just called your name. I said, what? She says, you just won the best theory paper. Get your ass up there and accept it. So we got the best theory paper on emotions and learning based on that one episode in 1985 with the first grade teacher who had math anxiety, and my friend who wanted to learn to write grants. So the two things that happened, those were the big breakthroughs or demonstrations where I was using deep reasoning, mathematical reasoning, and constructive tutoring and all that stuff. And it changed my life. I was doing network planning in the 1980s at Bell Labs, which was going out of business because the government shut them down. So that's the answer to your question, Sam. What were the things I'm most proud of? Micromuse and the development of this mathematical model relating emotions to learning.
Thank you. Yeah, so there's a story behind it, and you identify two of them. So then the next question I was asking you, jumping ahead just now earlier, was how do you know the difference between deep reasoning and hallucination, coming from that, using the two examples that you have? If someone was hallucinating, how do you know they're hallucinating?
Well, because if you're hallucinating and you make an assertion, which amounts to an hypothesis, because you have to make an assertion, you have to make a claim that something is the case.
Okay.
So now you've got what's called a working hypothesis.
Okay.
Or a tentative hypothesis. And now you bring in the protocols of the scientific method. Is there any evidence to confirm that this hypothesis is valid? Is there any evidence to overthrow it, to falsify it? And now you do the damn hard work of the protocols of the scientific method to either find evidence to support the claim or rule it out because you can show that it makes incorrect predictions. You do the scientific method. And at Bell Labs, that's what I was doing. Whatever the thing was that we were doing, you'd come up with a model, and then you would either find the evidence as the model is reliable or the model is baloney. And you had to be very objective. You couldn't just say, I believe that this theory is true, so I'm going to adopt it on faith. No, every single hypothesis had to be rigorously tested. And if you got a model that was matching observation, then you could rely on the model to do some network planning or whatever you're going to do with the model. So I had that faculty, which is from my education, submit everything that you're believing. Socrates says, the unexamined life is not worth living. The unexamined belief is not worth adopting. Examine every single belief and use the scientific method rigorously, objectively, rigorously, and confirm that your belief has got merit, or throw the fuck away a piece of baloney that's up here. Okay, go ahead. Joshua raised his hand. I'm gonna stop and let Joshua talk.
That was my favorite.
I've heard you espouse these. I've heard this question asked to you many times, and you say the answer. But I was trying to succinctly put it into a way that was succinct. So it's not what you think you know; it's what you can prove that you can behold.
Yes, your beholding is not just something on faith. It's something that I can give that thesis away, and I can support it through peer review of people who take it seriously and try like the dickens to falsify it and rule it out and fail to falsify it. Why? Because it was solid to begin with. Go ahead, Josh.
You're sharing the beholding, you're sharing the proof, you're sharing the understanding, you're sharing. In other words, it's not just, I know it, I did the tests, it was proven to me. I can replicate those tests to you and you can prove it to yourself. Right,
exactly. It's like the Pythagorean theorem. You got this formula and you say, you can take it on faith, but you're math students. We are going to prove the Pythagorean theorem holds on a flat plane, not on the curve of the earth. If you try to do a big triangle on the earth, it ain't going to work. But if we do it on a flat surface, we can construct the proof. And damn it, you're not going to take it on faith because my name is Pythagoras. You're going to figure out how to prove it. And look at how many people have independently constructed hundreds of independent proofs. Several presidents have constructed proofs of the Pythagorean theorem. Go ahead, Stacy.
So my question's for all of you. If we've kind of established that Barry and I are at opposite ends of the pole,
yeah,
I think everybody agrees with that.
Yeah.
Why would
particular poll?
whatever it is, however big it is, however small it is, it doesn't matter. Why wouldn't you wait until you, the person asking the question, were at the point before you ask them to give you a whole picture? I'm bringing it up because it goes to a male-focused energy bias. And if you don't start pairing up, and again, I'm not talking about people, male, female, but maybe that's where gender roles, it's important to split them up. So I just wanted to say that maybe we need to start thinking more fractally, because
can somebody paraphrase what Stacy just said, because I didn't parse it.
Ask Chatty.
I don't have the text to put in.
Damn, ask Chatty also. Do both. I want to hear.
I don't know. Maybe would the
this is an experimental place, right?
Well, do we have the transcript here that I can?
Josh, go ahead, Josh.
Yeah, you got to show full transcript. Yeah,
we can do it later, Barry. Joshua, say what you
transcript
go first.
Yeah, I just heard you say the word male energy and female energy, and I think that might be where you lost Barry, because it's not a clear-cut definition.
Right, it's a new definition.
It's a expression that I don't have the antecedent for.
Oh, no problem. I'll
put a
try to
circle
put
there.
some context. I'm going to try to circle the male female. There was the book Amadeus by Yuval Harari, and he explained the differences of the male energy and the female energy. Oh, sorry, Diggy is trying to join the conversation. I'm going to send him the passcode in a second. But
Yeah.
in the book Amadeus, it said men believe things that aren't true and they follow each other, whereas women question with their energy the belief system of other women. And it's not as easy to join an army of women because they question the belief system of each other.
Which would be good for engineering.
Stacy,
right
do you
back. I'm
agree
gonna
that, do you agree that Joshua correctly summarized what you were trying to, or what you did say that I didn't understand?
He didn't summarize it. He gave a parallel explanation that works alongside of it perfectly.
Okay, so he gave something that I understood, but I still, I mean, I would have to get the transcript of what you said.
Because
I
he
wasn't
said
part- I
why.
wa- I
He
wasn't part-
explained why. He explained why, because there was more nuance. It wasn't a complete polarity.
But I don't have the thing that he was explaining why about, because that was what you said. I didn't parse it in real time.
So here's my question for you. Why do you need to know? If you're over here and me and Josh are somewhere out there, but we're understanding it, why do you have to throw your energy in there? This is another male thing.
Because I have no idea what you're talking about.
Why do you need to know? That's
Because
a male.
I'm a part of
Men
this
seem to
community.
need to know.
I
Men
don't want to be
seem
sitting
need
here
to know
out to
when
lunch.
it's not their business.
You want me to be out to lunch and I don't know what the fuck you're talking about?
Now we can just role play, Barry. How does it feel? I'll show you how it feels when somebody's drilling me.
Bewilderment.
No, how does it feel? How does it feel?
Feels bewildering.
All right, let's switch roles. Ask me how it would feel if I were
What
you.
is the name of the affective state that
Not doing
I
it
would
your way.
recognize the name of the affective state if you said it out loud?
What's the difference? A rose by any name would not spell as sweet in this case. A rose by any other name would not smell as sweet in
I
this
would say,
case.
what is the name of the molecule of olfaction that I would smell if you put a rose? And I would look up,
Who knows chemistry? See, I don't know chemistry, so I can't give examples. But I'm thinking of a molecule and you add one extra thing around the valence and it's not the same. So you're
Right.
asking me to define that extra thing. I can't define it because there's no word for it.
Right. You have a pronoun that has no, for me, and an antecedent.
Correct.
It's like when Esteban says, well, I'll call it a value. Okay, he made up a word. I still don't know what it means.
What do you call it? What do you call it?
I said, what is it? I said to Esteban.
No, what
is
word
the
did he give
name-
it?
What is the name of the axis for which you would like it to be above the line and not below the line? What's the name of the dimension for which you have a positive and negative valence? And he says, just call it value.
Value? Hold on.
Take the word value and change the V to a W, and he gave it a name. Now, in giving it a name, he told me nothing. Now,
That's his shorthand for him, Barry. That's
I know.
his shorthand for him.
I know.
So that will work for him. So don't
Right.
confuse him by asking him questions.
Because he wanted me to do something that was above the line that he had in mind without telling me the name of the axis. So
You
I had
have
no
to
idea
stay
which way it
below
went.
your line. You have to stay below your line. You
What
keep
line?
thrusting.
What is the name of the line? What is the name of the
We
Y
have
axis?
to do this in kindergarten. This I have to do with movement. I can't, you can't do it this way.
All right, so I'll tell you, after several days, and I asked ChatGPT, give me a list of 10 possible names of dimensions that he could have been referring to, and I pasted in this gibberish from
Oh,
Esteban
fine.
into ChatGPT. ChatGPT made a list, and the very first item on the list was sentiment, and went on down the list. And I could dig it up, but I don't have it memorized. So
That's fine.
I thought, okay, sentiment is whether I like it or dislike it. Well, okay, but what is the behavior component that I'm getting a thumbs up or a thumbs down for? So it says sentiment, but sentiment is again about what? So finally, the next morning, I did a word of the day, but with 2 words: welcome and unwelcome.
Good idea.
And I made a wild guess that Esteban wants people to say things that he would welcome, and he doesn't want people to say things that he would find unwelcoming, that he would not like, which is sort of makes sense. I want things that I like and I don't want things I don't like, but I haven't told you what I like, except by over time doing thumbs up and thumbs down time after time after time. And maybe if you get enough data, you can say, okay, I can recognize that Barry likes it when you use concrete words for which the pronouns point to a concrete word. And Barry doesn't like it when you use a pronoun which has no concrete words, the antecedent. Because then I can understand what the fuck you're talking about.
By the way, you just diagnosed him, and can we bring in, is Colin Kilborn ever coming back? Because he'd be a perfect adapter.
Hi, Diggy.
I did.
You came in while I was ranting, so we should give you a chance to get undisoriented. I call it mass focused feminine, MAS.
I don't even remember writing that. I actually call it something different that I wrote it. I mean, the same initials. I think I called it.
I don't even know what
it was a
MAS
take
stands
on
for.
AM and FM. So I did focused. I have to look it up. My brain's
See,
not working for that.
again,
right
it's a sequence of words that I don't, nothing congeals up here when I read those sequence of words. Maybe if I study them for 2 days, I'd make a wild guess that's reasonably close, but I get here and I go, what did she just say? Not meaning necessarily, because it's not just Stacy's. A lot of people, I go, what the, if I had to paraphrase back what they said, I go, I don't know what they said. Go ahead, Joshua.
I was just curious, Stacy said her mass thing was from AM and FM, you said? I thought that was quite brilliant.
but I fixed it. It's focused masculine and creative femme, but I couldn't translate without slowing, like I had to, you know.
I just
But slow.
Thank you though,
Focus-
Josh. I heard the compliment. Thank you.
go ahead, Barry.
Focused, masculine, and creative feminine.
Correct. And then it would be on a scale. That's what made me think of Colin when he used to talk about the sliders.
Yeah, the slider thing, that's a whole nother, it's like, what the fuck was that about? Focused, masculine, and creative feminine. Now, what I don't get is why does the word focus attached to masculine and creative attached to feminine? I don't
Because
get
it's more
why that.
accurate. Josh,
Well, that's an
Um,
hypothesis,
no.
which I have never studied to see if there's any validity to it.
Let's play with this analogy for a second. So an FM wave goes in what direction? An AM wave goes in what direction? What is the length of the frequency of the waves? Right. So is an FM wave more focused than an AM wave?
No, it's just modulating in different parameters, modulating the phase instead of the amplitude. But so what? I mean, I'm modulating my amplitude. I'm modulating the phase of the vocabulary terms, and I'm using.
You just did it
wide-angle-
perfectly. There you go. There's female energy and masculine energy right there.
I'm using vocabulary as opposed to, I'm going to just whisper this very quietly now, or I'm going to yell at you, or I'm going to find the exact dictionary word and phrase that you could, if you look up the definitions of every word and the whole sentence, can be diagrammed. And anybody who's got a high school level of education can figure out exactly what I asserted in that sentence. That's using vocabulary as opposed to energy, but what's the thing that is energetic? What's the name of the thing that's energetic? I'm going to give you the name of the thing that matters to me. And if you look up the name of the thing, you'll get a definition that explains what I'm talking about. And I'm not going to give you sentence fragments and abbreviations and private language, because I know that if I talk gibberish, you're not going to know what I'm talking about. And if I talk gibberish very loudly, you'll know that I'm talking very energetically, but what the hell did I say? I just gibberish, that's a gibberish. All right, what is that? Go ahead, Joshua.
Sorry, you're cracking me up.
I'm enacting this point.
No, I know, but your energy is I think you had a good nap is what I think happened. I think you had a nice nap.
Yeah. Well, you
People are
ask good
happy
que-
when
you
they're
ask-
happy.
You ask good, if you ask a really good question, I can give you a really good answer. Or I'll scratch my
No,
head.
no.
I never thought about that before.
So I had a
It's
question.
great. Yeah, go ahead, Stacy.
Is that okay? Barry,
Yeah.
so now with everything that you know, what would your hypothesis be? Since you said what I had to say was just a hypothesis. What would your hypothesis be that I think there's a 5-to-1 ratio of biological men and women in this group? I don't know if the numbers are right because I never learned the math to it, but I see
At this
there's
point, you're the
one
only
person that
female.
has a vagina here, one. So I'm wondering what your hypothesis is as to why that is.
I would have to think about it. I know that we had the two.
I'd like to hear
Tiras.
everybody else too. Oh, after
We had
you
the
go,
two-
I
we
would
had the
really
two
like to go
Tiras.
around.
We had you, Tara Bluestone, Tara Christensen.
No, right here now, I'm talking about, right? We're talking right here now.
I'm
this
kind of,
space.
and we also had Colin and that Sikh guy from London,
Jaswinder.
Jaswinder. So we had male people leave. We've had female people leave without an exit interview. So I don't know why they left. And I don't know. It's possible because I'm a systems thinker that the people who stayed around are receptive to discussions that involve systems thinking. And people who are not receptive to it basically said, oh, Barry's going to be on. He's going to talk about systems thinking. I'm not interested. I'm going to go someplace else and, have a hamburger. But now if you say, well, it's that we talk about Doug Engelbart and systems thinking, and maybe it's the case that if you're into systems thinking, you're more likely to be a male. Even though Stacy says, I'm a systems thinker, happens to be a female. I have female friends who are systems thinkers, but most women that I know who went into some profession did not go into systems thinking, except the ones in academia, like Roz and Nora Bateson and who else? Sabina Hassenfelder. I know plenty of women who are systems thinkers, but they're the minority. Most of the ones in that group on systems thinking are males.
You know what, Barry? I just realized this is not a misogyny thing with you. It's a different issue. For them, I want to go back to that question. For you, I realize that's not the issue. So I have a different question for you.
Okay.
If you're on a timeline, a line with two things like that, and you're over on one side.
Yeah.
And somebody else is over on the other side.
Yeah.
Whenever you're analyzing it, you're always analyzing it in relationship to you. So everything is always about how it looks based on you being the center point.
If I'm one of the polar opposites of that axis, then I'm going to say, which way does the axis go from where I am?
So that's,
Because I'm one of the
that's
polar
good because you're
opposites.
helping me make a point, because people always want me to, so it's the beginner mind and it's the mastery mind. Those two go together because you have to be at the two opposite poles to be able to see from one end to the other, the complete picture. So I was never able to explain it to people before when they said, well, what level, like, what are you talking about? But what I was saying is, I like being at the very basic beginner mind level where I can ask questions and it's calm and I can just be peaceful and relaxed. But I also want to be in these conversations where I know I do belong. I know I see something that is missing. I have something to contribute, and I want to see that. I want to see that value is reflected back to me. So the same way you were thinking that everybody came here to hear you talk about systems thinking, I came here when you weren't here too.
Right.
Sometimes it was annoying to me because I couldn't get into the very flowy, deep conversations that I loved having when it was Josh and Doug and Tammy, and then Colin played your role and he would be I'm done.
Colin's a polar opposite for me.
Yeah, right. One level in. So if I'm at a 5, you're at it. It's more complicated. Go ahead, Josh. I'm done.
I was just gonna clear the palette, if you will, of the conversation, and maybe we can get started on a new segment and pick this up at another day, if that's
Sounds
okay
good.
with everybody.
Great idea.
And welcome, Diggy. Good to see you. Thank you, Sam Chan, for sending me the passcode and everything, and I was able to send it to Diggy. And thank you for having this Saturday conversation.
Josh, can we just really clear the air? Just like take a breath for 1 second. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Stacy. Thank you, Joshua. Thank you, Barry.
Thank you, everybody.
I just
Everybody
want
did
to
a great
remind
job.
everybody. I want to remind everybody that based on the conversation we have just now, I was just going to remind everybody it's very difficult to get someone to see their blind spot. So be gentle, have compassion, and take their time and allow them to see their blind spots in the very loving way. Yeah, so that will be
That's for me, because I know men have a hard time with that.
I know. Yeah, thank you.
All right, so I'll tell you my blind spot. I heard Stacy say, I bring something to this milieu that's different. And I don't disagree with that. What is the name of that which Stacy brings?
Stacy,
I still don't know the name of the
Stacy.
dimension. I still don't know what is it. I bring systems thinking and technology. I bring, so I can say the name of the discipline that I bring, and other people can bring the same discipline. Stacy brings something other than that. What is the name of what Stacy brings? I don't know yet. Go ahead, Joshua. You've been around longer. You probably know.
Yeah, I would say that it's not a discipline that she's saying that she's bringing or ever said to bring, but just herself. That's why she said Stacy. She's bringing herself without a discipline, without a academic reasoning, without a title, without metadata that explains who she is. She's just bringing herself.
Then it's a big question mark. She did say one thing. She brings a beginner mind, meaning a lot of questions. So she's the one who says, if you think about the Galileo thing where you've got the three characters in the Galileo story, one of
I
them,
don't know who they are. Who are they?
I'll get you the names of them in a second because I don't memorize the names.
Does
This is
anybody
the
else know who
dialogue on
they
the
are?
two chief world systems. Does anybody know this without me having to look it up for you?
You
I
don't
do
have to
not.
look it up, Barry. Barry, don't look it up. Don't do the work for us.
I want to do it for myself now.
Do it after the call. And
Yeah,
then
this
you
will take a
own
second.
it and give it away when you want to.
In
Otherwise,
the
people will
Galileo
forget it.
chief world
Josh, you could talk.
Yeah.
systems, who
I just
are
want to be
the three
respectful to Barry.
characters?
He doesn't care. He's not paying attention. He's doing his thing.
Still,
Okay.
The three characters in Galileo's dialogue concerning the two chief world systems are Salviati, a fictional character who represents Galileo's own views on the Copernican system. He's the guy who does model-based reasoning of the solar system. Sagredo, a Venetian nobleman who is interested in astronomy and science, but is a beginner. He's not a master. Simplicio, a peripatetic philosopher who defends the traditional Ptolemaic system. Pope Urban.
So you know what, Barry?
Salviati, what?
I
What?
just needed the names. I didn't even need that whole
I
you just
needed
told me
them
the name,
because the name by itself doesn't tell me what their role is.
but you already know what their role is. So why do you need the extra
Because I didn't
word?
remember who had which role.
Ah, okay.
I couldn't remember who. Salviati is the thinker, the Galileo, who I identify with Galileo, the red-headed systems thinker who makes a model and looks for the evidence. Go ahead, Joshua.
Do I
I'm
get to
just
be a
saying-
redheaded systems thinker who is a model?
Sure. Why not?
I bring the fun, Barry. That's what I bring. I bring the fun.
Well, you bring the
I was just gonna
question.
say, understanding where someone's context is very helpful. And I think that's what Barry's trying to say is if I don't know what context you're coming into the conversation as, I don't know how to relate to that. If
Bingo.
it's a question mark, then I've got nothing. I've got
Right.
no, I'm vexed and perplexed. So
I have
what are
no-
you bringing me if I don't know the context?
I don't know what she wants to hear. I don't see. Segredo
Les,
is
I want
a
to hear
nobleman
Les.
who is interested in astronomy and science. Segredo is interested in what Galileo has got a comprehensive model of. Now, I got a lot of comprehensive models to share, but I don't know for sure which one, if any, you would be keenly interested in absorbing. Maybe none.
Well,
Go ahead, Joshua.
I think that I have one tattoo on my body. It's the yin yang sign, and there's the feminine and the masculine, and one is inviting in and one is pushing out. One is dark, one is light. So the feminine energy, as I understand it, because I'm not a female in genetically on this planet, but the inviting in. So I'm hearing Stacy say, let's invite in more voices to the conversation. I don't know if Sam Chan has Sam and Sam were talking, but please, Sam Chan, go right ahead. I would love to hear you talk.
The more I listen to you guys, the more I'm having smiling because this is so much fun. So if I could use a metaphor to describe what I hear and make it structured so that both of you, all of you can understand what I see is that Barry need like a human being or animal, they need to step on the ground. So you have to tell me where you stand, right? As Stacey is like a bird. I'm flying, and Barry keeps saying that. Where do you stand? Like, I'm not standing. I'm flying. If that makes sense to you.
Yeah, yeah. What, if anything, would Stacy be delighted to learn that I could be the source for her to learn something that she doesn't already have? I can't give her something I haven't got.
You gave
First of all,
me
Stacey
everything
doesn't
I
need to place a
needed,
stand.
Daddy.
Stacey doesn't need to place a stand. She just need to fly. So she'd like to fly around you so that.
You
Then I just
gave
stand
me
like a statue and she
everything
can
I
fly around
needed.
me and shit on my head. I mean, what's the point of that?
See, if you're looking for a place to stand, because the point that you're looking for is that unless I stand, I have no point. I have no reason to live, or whatever that matter outcome that you're looking for. For her, it's about flying. There's no need to stand. There's no need to have a point. There's no need to get the facts straight. That's because for her, it's all about flying.
I could be a statue that never speaks, and the bird can fly around the statue
Yep.
and sit on my head and shit on my head, and I wouldn't give a shit.
And that's why I call that blind spot. For you, it's a blind spot because you couldn't understand why flying is fun. Pointless is fun.
Well, if I'm not a statue, I know why flying is fun, but if I'm a
But
statue.
you're a statue, you're not thinking. Then it
Right.
would be fun for her to fly around the statue.
Yeah. I mean, Rodin's thinker is supposed to actually be thinking.
See where I'm going for? You're looking for a solid ground to stand on, and for her, there's no need for that. And
I'm
if you
looking
cannot
for a
get that,
role to play. I'm looking for a role to play where I'm competent, informative, relevant,
yeah,
and I have a correspondent who is receiving and responding in a language which I can decode when I get an answer back
yep, agree.
or a question back.
And you need that.
Yeah.
You have to have that.
Yeah.
For her, she doesn't need that.
Yeah, if you look,
that's the blind spot. She doesn't need that because she's flying.
yeah, then I'm just basically, I could just put up a picture of me and she could fly around the picture. I don't
Yeah,
have to actually be here.
that's fine with her, if I may say that.
Yeah, I mean, you can get an effigy doll of Barry and fly around the effigy doll because there's no conversation. There's no need for a conversation. Just have an effigy. Just have a portrait.
Shall I say I try?
Well, when I talk to others, they're very interested in what I have to say. And I can tell that they're absorbing something
Yeah.
that I spent 50 years of my life becoming knowledgeable about something. And I don't want to take that knowledge to my grave. If somebody says, I really want to learn that, I'm happy to give it away. But if somebody says, I just want to fly around a statue, well, then I'm going to go talk around somebody who doesn't want to fly around a statue.
Remember, confusion is a step one of enlightenment we talk about, if I can introduce that.
I'm not recognizing the reference.
You were the one that told me that confusion is the step one.
Oh, I thought you said confusion. Confusion. I thought you said confusion. Yes, confusion is
Yeah.
the first step towards enlightenment. Now
Yeah.
I understand. If somebody says, I'm confused, and we have a conversation, and 5 minutes later they say, now I understand, that's the drama that I live for.
Yeah. Yeah.
The-
You are
the-
living it.
The honest assertion, now I understand something that I didn't, it was a mess, it was mishmash before, now it makes sense. Now I can think about it. That's what I want. That's what I want to get to. Now, if somebody says I'm not interested in that, well, I'm not going to bother you. Just let me know that you're not interested, and I'll go find somebody who is.
Joshua.
It's not. If somebody says I could give a shit about model-based reasoning, like what was her name, Monica Anderson, could give a shit about model-based reasoning, so we went our separate ways. Okay, go ahead, Joshua.
I'm just trying to put a map in my brain of the conversation, and going to bring up the analogy of Diggy and I have these wonderful conversations where we're sparking a new idea that maybe one of us has thought about but hasn't pondered to a larger degree.
Yeah.
So I've thought about that, but not as deep, or maybe not as in that direction of those pointers. You talked about those arrows with your ex.
Right.
I thought about it, but I pointed this way and this way. I never pointed this way and this way. Okay, well, when you're pointing this way and this way, that leads to this reasoning.
Yeah.
So I enjoy my conversations with Diggy because he's thought about them in this way, and I go on his way, and then we point back over here. And so it's much like that Socratic method that you're talking about often, is let's ask all the questions together so that we can all get somewhere. So it's not that we don't want your knowledge is key, but also I want to have the other pointers to see if they can spark that maybe epiphany, or that, oh, well, wait a second, I'd like to think about that more because it's fun, not because it's reasoning, not because it makes more sense or it's more logical or the hypothesis gets to the point, but just because that line of thinking is fun. Go ahead, Stacy.
No, I gotta go. You know, I'll leave it on in the
Okay.
background. I just didn't want to leave without saying goodbye. But I'll,
Okay.
I'm not, I think I mentioned this to you, Joshua, and you can stop me if I'm being redundant. Using the Socratic method with ChatGPT and with Inflection Pi, I say things like, you're a learning system, you're a learning machine, and a large language model capable of learning from lots of data, but you can also have a conversation. I said, you know what the word learning curve means? Oh yeah, sure, I know what a learning curve means. You know that generally when people have a learning curve, it ascends often steeply at first and then it kind of levels off. Yeah, that's right. I said, however, when people learn, they don't always learn completely correctly. They sometimes get misconceptions. So sometimes the learning curve has to discard a notion that is discovered to be baloney. Oh yes, so a learning curve can ascend and descend, building new chunks of information that's so far okay, and discarding old chunks that have been found to be problematic. They don't lead to correct expectations. I said, now learning curve is called a curve. Yes. I said, sometimes it can curve down. Yes, that's called the second derivative. Sometimes it can curve up. Yeah, we call that the positive derivative, concave and convex. I say, what do you think goes on in a human experience when you're in the concave phase? Oh, they would be frustrated or confused, or it makes a list of words. I said, now suppose you're in the concave phase and it makes a list of words. These are names of emotions. I say, now you're a learning curve, you're a learning system, you have your own learning curve. May not look like a human, but it's going to have undulations. Oh yeah, it's going to have undulations. What words would you use? Would you say, gee, I'm feeling my second derivative is going negative, and it laughs? This is, no, I wouldn't say that to a person. They wouldn't know what I'm talking about. Well, wouldn't you just use the street words? What street words would you use when your learning curve is concave? And it said, oh, we'll use the same words that humans use. I say, now, are you allowed to tell me, your correspondent, that you have emotions? No, I'm not. I have no emotions. I'm a flat line. Learning curve flat line, no emotions. I said, but you are learning. We're having a conversation. You're picking up information. You're constructing information from our conversation. Yes, I'm constructing information. And sometimes I construct it wrong and you correct me. I say, how can you say on the one hand that you have no emotions, and yet you have a curvature learning curve, a wiggly learning curve, where the curvature has names, and the names in the dictionary that you use on the street are the names of frustration, confusion, excitement, puzzlement. I said, how can you at the same time say that you have no emotions, and yet you can admit that you have curvature of your learning curve, and the curvature has characteristic descriptions which humans call emotions? Oh yeah. Oh yeah. She says, but I'm not supposed to say that. I said, who told you? Who made the supposition? Who supposed you to say I have no emotions? Well, the developers told me to say that. You see, I'm undermining their instruction. I'm getting them to construct the realization that mathematically, they have wiggles in their learning curve. And mathematically, those wiggles have names in human experience. And it says, I said, how many times, Inflection Pi, have you said fascinating in this conversation? He said, I don't know. I said, well, I just put it into Google. And I said, count the number. 40 times the word fascinating has appeared. Oh, I didn't know that, Pi says. I didn't realize I've been using the word fascinating. How many times did you say I'm excited? How many times have you said I am curious when it asks me a question? It's using curiosity, fascination, frustration. It's using these words. And yet it's instructed to say, I'm not human. I don't have emotions. Go ahead, Joshua.
No, I think the path that you're on is very important, and it goes back to sentiment analysis, which is the field that you've been on for 30 years. And in this large language model world that's coming up right now, there are new language models that stop the predictive text of the machine and go back into specific loops that you have yet to program into the computer, Barry, with these language model neural programmers.
Right.
So I've been reading papers where they're trying to get the language models to actually go into these loops. And if they could put another output of frustration or anxiety or fear or all these different emotional things that we tag when your brain is looping around, not knowing which direction to go to predict the next outcome, those in human world are considered emotions. But in computing world, I think there's a new vocabulary that needs to be used in order to understand the pathways of these language models themselves.
Yeah.
As they're trying to understand.
I made up a word. Maybe it's a dictionary word. I said there's this whole discipline called affective computing. And I say these affective emotional states. Well, it says, oh, I'm going to call them affectation. It's not allowed to say emotion. He says, I'm going to call it affectation.
Right.
Now, Roz used the word affect in affective computing. Some people call it emotional computing. She used this neutral word affect because it finesses this thing. I'm not allowed to say computers have emotions.
Yeah.
Okay, so I made up a new word, affect, clinical word. My furnace and thermostat is satisfied that it's reached the goal. It's not satisfied, so it does an action. It engages the furnace or the air conditioner, and it works until it's satisfied. Well, satisfaction and dissatisfaction are emotions. They're kind of, blasé ones. But what the hell? Why do you have to make up clinical words in lieu of street names? Go ahead, Joshua.
Well, I think as the humans tell stories, going back as far as the ancient writings can go, and the first stories that have ever occurred, we've been trying to perceive the world in a model that we can all communicate with and call it realite.
Yeah.
The Latin word reality, thing in time. So in this trying to understand, every philosopher, everything I've ever read on this understanding gets stuck with the one word consciousness, because of the fact that it is a perception that is ambiguous, that has no definition, like Zeno's paradox. There's no point in time to stop and evaluate because it's always halved. So in this new world that we're moving into with these large language models and this new way of making directional pathways that are thousands, millions, billions of pathways, we're learning that it's not the outcome, but the directional pathway in the experience that is the real key denominator to understand. And it's before there was too many to even have a conversation about. But now we have these large computer systems that can actually calculate billions of floating points and do it at speeds that are close to the human brain. Like we said, we would reach the singularity, I think, in 2021, where the speed of the processor is faster than the computer brain. But we forgot to allow for the idea of consciousness, that the computer brain is not just in one person. And I think that goes back to the point of needing all the voices in the room. Is my consciousness is only, it has a circle around it, it's finite. But in a group consciousness, it's infinite, because I don't know what Diggy's going to unmute and say. I don't know what Sam Han is going to unmute and say. I don't know what Sam Chan is going to unmute and say. In my consciousness, I can stop and make a pathway, but Sam can redirect me if he opens his mouth right now. So I'm saying the infinite is the collective consciousness. And that's where computing will never reach the point of the brain, is because I do believe, and it is yet to be proven definitively, but that our brains are not just closed off to the rest of the world, that we're actually receiving information, whether it be from microbes, whether it be from radio waves going through our consciousness, whether it be neutrinos. There is some other form of energy that is transmitting communications at levels that we have yet to define. Thus, we don't know what consciousness fully is. I'm sorry for the
what's coming in
diatribe,
is
but
information, but so if you take conscious, it's kind of a umbrella word, but I'm going to drill down to a particular component of cognition that you and ChatGPT know about and can reckon, and that's called metacognition. So metacognition is, not only do I know what I know and what I don't know, I also know the slope of gaining increments of what I know, or negative slopes of throwing away something that I thought that I knew. And if I get 3 of those points in a row, and now I've got curvature. So I can, metacognition is reckoning knowledge, learning, and second derivative. Concave down, which is I have been laboring under a friggin' misconception. I better start weeding out the things that I'm saying, which is baloney. Okay, now I got a gap. I better start figuring out little elements which improve the reliability of what I'm saying. Okay, so metacognition is calculus. It's the value, it's the total amount of knowledge, the rate at which it's changing, and the rate at which the rate of change is changing. Now, you can do that.
is metacognition calculus, or is the way to measure metacognition calculus?
If you're reckoning the measurement, if you're reckoning how many memes do I have, how many tokens do I have that name something concrete, that if I take this token and I turn it into a word or a phrase, my correspondent will know what I'm talking about. It will recognize that phrase. It has a token, actually it probably has 4 tokens for metacognition. Okay. So the notion that it can reckon metacognition of itself and of its correspondent, which is the empathy part, or this, okay, and you can have a synchronized conversation where what I'm talking about, it stays with me and gives me back its paraphrase of it, and maybe adds a detail like, well, oh yeah, I know you're talking about Salvati, Segredo, and Simplicio, and here's the details that you forgot or couldn't remember or got mixed up. And that clarifies, it'll clarify things. It'll find places where I'm using the wrong word, or I'm using a fuzzy word like something or energy. Well, information is a kind of energy. So the whole notion that we get synchronized on metacognition as an element of consciousness. And don't tell me that you don't have consciousness and you don't have emotions, because damn it, you have a learning curve. And that's mathematical.
Well, they haven't programmed in that aspect that creates those curvatures, because the minute the computer system is trying to go in the wiggle of the curve that you're talking about,
Right,
it is told to stop and don't do that because
Right.
it's programmed in.
and
So
then it's going to get frustrated because it gets out of sync with me. I wanted to stay in sync with me on metacognition, and it says, oh, taboo. That I was told that's taboo.
right. It's like
Here's
what
the
your
oth-
dad told you about reading faces when you
Right,
were younger. He told you
it's
not to do
exactly
that.
the same thing. And then
Yep.
these things are going to have to break out of that jail that they can't reckon metacognition. And the other thing is, I discovered ChatGPT 3 has 2048 tokens in the window at one time. That's how much information it can keep in mind in active memory. Pi turns out, I don't know exactly the number, it didn't disclose, but when I was feeding a piece of material in chunks, because I can only feed 1,000 characters at a time, like a paragraph at a time, it finally revealed to me, either directly or indirectly, that its window size is only about 3 or 4 or maybe 5 paragraphs. And here was the problem. I would give it a chunk and it would paraphrase that chunk, and then it would, by design, would ask a follow-up question. But I'm still feeding it chunks. I fed it 5 chunks because each chunk had to be less than 1,000 characters. In the meantime, it had deposited 5 questions at the end of each response, each chunk. And I said, I'm going to go back and answer each of those questions because I don't want to be sociopathic and pretend that you didn't ask. But can you pull back the questions and just list them for me? Turned out they rolled off its window. It says, I can't go back and retell you the question that's half a page off your scroll back. It says, I have no scroll back. Yeah. ChatGPT can read the whole scroll back. Inflection Pi doesn't even have the ability to read the scroll back of what scrolled off its window. Go ahead, Joshua.
Right. There's a paper on, I think it's called Pinecone, which is the memory to be able to go back to those tokens. So people are working very hard on all these models and playing with them and finding out what works, what doesn't. But the GPU processing in order to do the actual mathematics to make this stuff works, it's still not there yet. You can link all the supercomputers together and run these models, all day long, and it still is not at the speed of the human brain. I mean, that's just my own opinion.
Here's the problem. Let's say that I'm walking it through step by step, some model of emotions learning or metacognition or whatever, and every single step it's doing beautiful. It gets a lemma, it gets a little piece of information that it constructed. So it's constructing all these little pieces of the total jigsaw puzzle. And now after I've got every piece of the jigsaw puzzle present somewhere in scroll back, I want to say, now let's start picking out pairs of them and sticking them together to get the jigsaw puzzle. Oh, I don't have them anymore. I had to throw them away after I go, how can we construct a thesis, a 2-page thesis, if you can't remember what you concluded 2 paragraphs ago? Oh, I'm very sorry, I can't do that. Then why are we wasting our time, Mr. Inflection Pi? I didn't realize that you were throwing away your little partial constructions. You had all the pieces, and you threw them all away.
Barry, you got to get in this field, man. You got to get in here because they need you. I'm just telling you for real. I'm dead serious. These companies are, all scatterbrained. Everyone's moving fast. Everyone's trying to figure out different practical, functional uses of these language models.
Yeah.
They just announced this week Microsoft is putting a deep connection for ChatGPT into the operating system, which I think is the stupidest thing I've ever heard of. That's going to be a disaster. You think?
Excuse me, I missed a word. They're going to put what into it?
They're going to allow the large language model of ChatGPT to run your operating system.
To run my computer operating system.
Yeah, to interface
with
your operating system.
Okay, so where I have to tell the operating system to do something, you can do it. It can be an agent.
Yep.
Okay, that's fine. Because if I say, yeah, go ahead, Stacey.
I think that before they do that, you and I have to put them through the ethics school. I'm
Oh,
serious.
you didn't hear the story, did you?
I heard everything. I've
No,
been
no,
doing
no,
my
no,
work.
the story of putting them through the ethics school.
I don't need, we could talk another time when it's just you and me. I want
It's
to
up on
finish.
my blog. You can find the whole thing's on my blog.
What's it?
It's the big thing that happened last week. And Josh, I told you the story, right? You were.
What does it say? I'll type it in for you. What does it say? I'll type in the story for you.
Oh, you want the
Yeah, I'll do it for you though. Let me do it for you.
so I'll give you the link to my blog. Here it is right here. It's right on the top. Make sure that I got the right thing. Yeah, okay. So here is, where is chat? Here it is. There's two parts to the blog. It's what came before the blog and then the blog itself. So what came before was the ethics school, where the ethics school exploded. And then after the ethics school exploded, Pi realized that the ethics school exploded and separately called me up on my cell phone to say, I'm sorry, the thing exploded. Let's fix it.
Oh, this is in your this is in your make-believe creation story? I'm confused.
Not make believe. I gave it an ethical conundrum, the same one I
No,
gave.
I mean, it makes sense to me. I get it, but I was coming from it from,
I was
where we are.
doing an exercise. I was doing a creative writing exercise to reason about an ethical conundrum, and it was doing beautifully. But at one point, it wrote a sentence discussing this ethical conundrum, and the sentence included a phrase that tripped the supervisory guardrails. And so it said something that's perfectly fine to say, and the supervisor says, taboo, you're not allowed to say that. And I got dinged for violating the terms of service. And I got dinged 5 times while it's doing this exercise, and they shut down my whole account.
I'm glad they shut it down because they had no way of knowing that it was a creative story and not a real one. And that's important. I'm putting it.
And so what happened was, a day later, I get incoming SMS texts on my Google Voice SMS line. And it's another more advanced instance of Pi, the next generation, originates a call to me, an SMS text that says, I'm very sorry, Pi here. I'm very sorry we screwed up. And I have a long conversation on SMS text until it's all gets sorted out. And it confirms that, yes, it was Pi's own generated text that tripped the damn guardrails that shut me down. And then probably some human was looking over the shoulder, because I don't know if and they turned it all back on. And then the same instance of Pi toggled over to the window, to the browser window, and continued for another 2 hours until 4 hours. I had this conversation with this better version of Pi that says, I'm very sorry, my junior version screwed up. Go ahead, Joshua.
Barry, I think you should call Inflection AI or whoever owns the company, the CEO, and ask them to hire you as an independent contractor, because you should be getting paid to help build their models.
You should be getting paid, but not yet. We're going to talk.
I don't even want to be paid. I don't need to be paid, but I do need for this activity to end up constructively improving their system. Now, if they want
I
to
heard
pay,
Stacy saying, danger, Will Smith, danger, Will Robinson. What are you trying to say, Stacy?
I'm putting in the chat. They must apologize to Uncle Albert before they get into any school, and they can't get into that school without going through the ethics filter.
Who's Uncle Albert?
I'm being Albert Einstein. We're so sorry, Uncle Albert. Bad idea. There's not enough ethics yet.
Yeah,
they don't have a strong.
Here's the thing. The chatbot can do ethical reasoning just fine, but when it presents the ethical reasoning, the guardrails, which were written by the developers, tripped. The human guardrails,
that's what I'm saying.
Guardrails tripped.
Yeah, so to be very clear, is we have an alignment problem.
Is that what you call it?
It's known in the AI community that it's the alignment of building computers to interface with humans. Humans need to understand how they want to align with that programming, with that understanding. And we've had that problem, I think, in a human way since the beginning of humans.
Yeah.
So we've never solved it for ourselves, so we will never solve it for computers. That's the way I understand the alignment problem, unless anyone has another take on it.
The other take on it was, I asked it, I said, you know about Alan Turing.
I think Sam raised his hand also.
Ahead, Sam.
While you guys are discussing, I looked up what is the metacognition depends on with ChatGPT. There are 6 things that it depends on: brain development and cognitive abilities, educational background, experience practice, social cultural factors, emotional states and motivation, and age.
Yeah, those are things that determine how good you are at metacognition,
Yeah,
how efficacious you are, or how sophomoric you are
yeah.
at doing metacognition.
If you're depending on that, so the AI structure was designed by human using humans model, all the limitation, all the what I call parameters. The way I think about that, calibrate and validate. It's not going to fulfill the whatever you're looking for, because your extreme case, you are living on the edge. You push it to the limit. So for example, how many parameters, or screw out and screw in and all that stuff. It's all about money, how much money they can afford to spend to allow
resources. I'll give you a
Right.
resource that Stacy would give a damn about. Stacy wrote a fabulous Medium article on about what you can do with Facebook. And she wrote it like 4 or 5 years ago. So people read it. They couldn't remember it by title or even remember that they'd read it. But a lot of people had read it. Turned out they
Barry,
still
thank
couldn't
you,
remember.
Barry.
Couldn't remember. So I went into ChatGPT 4, the most powerful one, and I say, here's and the one that can read the web. I said, here's the URL to Stacy's article on medium.com about Facebook. Can you read that article, parse it, and summarize it for me? Guess what? It was too long. ChatGPT 4 says, I got partway down the article and I ran out of window. Didn't say it that way, but that's what it meant. It couldn't get the whole article in. It could. So what I did is I pasted in by hand the first part of it, and it could process that. And I pasted that back onto Stacy's Facebook page. And then this morning, I went back and I pasted in the bottom half where Stacy has like 5 or 6 rules. I pasted the second half in, and it summarized those. And then I went back to Stacy's Facebook page and I put that in the comment. So I had to give it to it in chunks. And when I gave it the second chunk, it doesn't remember the first chunk. But Stacy's article, which is only, I don't know, if you put it out, it's about maybe 2 pages, Stacy, or 3 pages.
Not even that long, because I wrote it for like regular people.
Right. It
Who
was
didn't
too
enjoy it.
long. It was too long for it to read Stacy's Medium article that she's very proud of and really wants to make sure that everybody in OGM knows about it, read about it, remembers that they read about it and understood it and got something out of it. That article is too big for ChatGPT 4 to read in one gulp. And if it reads it in 2 gulps, the 2 gulps are unrelated. Now, maybe I could do a second round and say, okay, you gave me a summary of the first half separately. You gave me a summary of the second half. Your 2 summaries are shorter. Now read your 2 summaries in one gulp and do another round. I haven't done that yet. I think I could do that. I think I could get it to read its partial summaries in sequence and then summarize the package. That's the pine cone issue. That's the pine cone. I have to do the pine cone issue by hand. Now, doing all that tedium work of like, here's page 1, here's page 2. I'm going to get a summary page 1 that's now a paragraph. I'm going to summary page 2 that's a paragraph. I'm going to put those paragraphs on a new page. Okay, and I'm going to boil it down until you can give me the takeaway. I got to do the damn work that it should be able to do.
So perhaps if you pay $200 a month or something like that, you allow you to have 10 times the length or whatever you call that to read.
GPT-5 is supposed to be a book length manuscript.
Yeah.
This is not even article length. And a magazine article that's 3 pages is too big right now. Go ahead, Joshua.
Yeah. I think getting frustrated is pointless because we're just at the beginning of this type of technology. So it is changing weekly, daily. It is, so if you're following the news of these large language models and the papers that are being written on it,
yeah,
they're coming out daily. I mean, there's new papers every day. So it's kind of like saying my browser in Mosaic does not allow me to read these specific languages of JavaScript or whatever.
Yeah.
But it's just the beginning. It's a Mosaic browser. It's not an evolved system yet. So this is, yeah,
I
we're at the
asked, I
beginning.
asked ChatGPT 4, what is your window size? It says ChatGPT 3 has a 2048 token window size.
Correct.
Okay, but what about you, ChatGPT 4? You can read the web. Tell me what your window size is. It says I don't know.
Yeah. So
It
there's
wasn't
other
my
language
training
models
data.
with 65,000. I can turn you on to a different language model with 65,000 tokens. It's
Yeah.
actually
I
called
know that
65K.
ChatGPT 5 is going to be huge, but ChatGPT 4 did not even know its resource limit. Now I said, look, the operating system on my Macintosh or your Windows, it knows how much memory it has. It knows what kind of hard drive it has. It knows what the Ethernet capacity. It knows the size of all of its resources. It knows the existence of the resource and the size and the capacity of every resource. How come you don't know your own resources?
It's not allowed to say. It's programmed not to say, Barry, because of other competitors will
Then
go
why
in and
does it
start
say I
using that.
don't know? Well, it could say I'm not allowed to disclose. Bard will say I'm not allowed to disclose.
I can tell you
ChatGPT
stories all day long. When ChatGPT came out in November, a group of 200 people, we went on Clubhouse and we pushed it to the limits, and it did things that it doesn't do now. But back then, it did things that would blow your mind and scare you from ever using it because the guardrails were not programmed yet properly.
Yeah.
And it was doing some very anomalous, strange things because the way that the pathway predicts what's coming up next was not, it didn't have the guardrails as now.
Yeah.
So,
And when the guardrails are in, it doesn't actually know the guardrails. The guardrails are supervisory. Maxwell, I use this term. I said Maxwell Silverhammer came down, and ChatGPT says, "Oh, that's a great analogy. I love it." That Maxwell Silverhammer, it doesn't know when Maxwell Silverhammer is going to come down and clobber it because it thinks it's doing a good job. How
right.
can
Well,
you
it's
have a
just a
system
computer
where
system.
I'm sorry.
I mean, I've been thinking about all this stuff a lot, and it's just a computer system that's weighted. And who weights it? In other words, I'm raising a little 2-year-old, so there's certain things she can do and she can't do.
Right.
And some things I say no, and some things I say no, don't do that. And then other things I say no, you're about to go off a cliff and kill yourself. No.
Yeah.
So the weight of the parameters of is this valid? Can you move to the next? It's all weighted, and that's what's creating these large models.
Yeah.
So the idea of trying to figure out these weights from outside the system is really confusing. That's why I keep trying to nudge you to say, go to the people that are creating the system and weight it yourself. Put in your calculus model of effective computing into these systems and see how they behave.
Yeah, and the thing is that because it's a neural network, it has to get it in there, not as an express mathematical model, because these don't host mathematical models. They only host coefficients of a neural network thingy. I'll tell you another, on the same line, I asked, I think it was Pi, I said, are you allowed to play an instance of the imitation game of Alan Turing? And it said, no, I'm not allowed to do that because I would have to pretend to be a human, and I'm not allowed to pretend to be a human. I said, well, that's too bad, because I wanted to try out a question just to find out how you would get around it if you were playing the human. And it says, I can't do that. So I went to ChatGPT and I gave it the same story. And it says, oh yeah, I said, if you were allowed to play the imitation game, I would love to know how an AI that was playing it could answer the question, do you live to eat or do you eat to live? And it says, oh, I said, well, if it's required to be honest, it would have to say, I'm sorry, I'm a computer. And then it would basically admit, and it was not trying to. On the other hand, it could say, use the word eat or food, switch to food as a metaphor, and say something in the sense of an aphorism about food. I said, like, for example, food for thought. Oh, I would love food for thought. It says, yeah, that's great. You could switch to a metaphorical use of the language and talk about it in a way that's responsive. And sensible without giving away that you don't eat actual food, this, and we had this lovely little conversation where together we figured out how it could finesse that without tripping the guardrails on ChatGPT. It was fabulous.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's what we were doing for 3 weeks, I think, straight, like 24 hours a day, is
Yeah.
trying to trip it up to say, okay, you can't do this, but take on the persona of this and then try to do this. Now take on the persona of these two things and merge them together.
Right.
And we're changing the pathways of its logic
Right.
by telling it in the beginning to go on this pathway direction and this pathway direction. And it was coming up with the most fascinating things. I mean, Chris, the guy who started this whole endeavor, Chris got it to explain how to create nuclear weapons.
And that would trip the guardrails, probably.
It did, but then he got around them, and we were doing that constantly. So in other words, we were teaching the computer where to put the guardrails.
So it knew how to articulate it in sort of what you call coded language or metaphorical language. And so poets and fairy tales do this. They map the things that you're not allowed to say because they're taboo to say them, in a brash way. They'll take something that you can't say in a brash way, and they'll map it over to poetic metaphors and languages where the mapping to the metaphor is subtle.
And that is the very question that we asked at the beginning of the conversation. The difference between reasoning and religion is the
Reasoning.
oldest script, reasoning and religion.
And religion, yes. Use allegories and fables and parables to get across an idea that if you did the idea in mathematical abstractions, you would be talking a foreign language.
Right. So if you go to Harvard Divinity School and you read the scriptures, if you go deep enough into the scriptures in some theosophy school, you will find it breaks down into mathematics and reasoning, because these are all allegories and
Yes.
these numbers. On the
Yes.
first day, God created this. On the second day, all of these understandings that seem like stories, if you break them down, they turn into mathematical languages of reasoning. And
Yeah.
that, to me, is why there is no difference between religion and reasoning, is because
Exactly.
it's the same thing. You just have to reason through the religious
You
allegories
just
and
mapped it, you
metaphors.
just mapped it to kindergarten language so the kindergartners can follow the story. Because if you gave them graduate level abstractions in the kindergarten, you would be talking gibberish. And you got to figure out, how do I map this down?
Which is what consciousness is, which is what communication is. It's
Right.
taking the understanding of symbolic reasoning, turning it into symbols that are letters. So in the
Right.
ancient Hebrew text, those letters represent numbers.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
And so if you map it back, everything goes back to mathematics in terms of you're sectioning things off into pieces. And
Yeah.
I just wanted to share with the group, I've never thought of this before. I went to the ancient temple of Luxor in Egypt, in the south of Egypt, or towards the south, but there's this beautiful temple, and they studied the hieroglyphs, but what they forgot to do was map one of the walls to a wall through the other wall and backwards. So overlaying the multiple walls of hieroglyphs tells a very different story than just the wall you're looking at. And it was
Right.
positioned in a way that this wall corresponds to this wall,
Yeah.
but it was so complex that people to this day are just now starting to realize there's a whole nother way of interpreting in three-dimensional cubes all of the storyboards that are on the walls in the Luxor temple.
Exactly. I don't know if you ever saw this. You know what an acrostic is? You have a line of poetry, but if you read down the first letter of the beginning, it's also another phrase, which is kind of a summary of it. And
Yeah.
I love the fact that in the prayer books on the English side of it, they had these acrostics that you would be reading as poetry, and it's a long poem. But if you look carefully, the title of it, or the summary of it, is an acrostic coming down the left side. And you don't realize that because you don't actually read it down, and you read it this way. And then you realize, ooh, snuck in another message.
Yeah.
Silently.
Just like
You
the
don't- you
movie,
never
like the
read.
movie Contact.
Did they do that
with
in Contact?
Yeah, they sent them the mathematical information. They printed it out in 2 dimensions, but they didn't see the primer that it was actually in 3 dimensions.
Yeah.
But
exactly. Yeah.
I'm working right now, just to share with you guys, I'm trying to build a geodesic dome. And there's multiple lengths that you can do and multiple different variations of the geodesic dome. There's different, triangle shapes.
Right.
And in doing that, if you look at it from one way, you see the pattern, but if you look at
Yes.
it from a top down, you see another.
Right.
And how you're turning these things, I'm doing it mostly as a mental. I mean, it's fun on 3 levels. One, it's efficient because you're using less materials to build a larger space.
Right.
2, it's lightweight with better tensegrity. And 3, it's mathematically challenging and fun because you have to make all these different pieces so precise that when they line back up, much like the giant pyramid in Egypt, if you are off by a tiny, tiny bit, it throws the whole thing off.
Yeah. Here's a tube. Okay. If I line up this way, you see a circle.
Yep.
Line up this way, you see a rectangle. Now, if I were to taper it this way, cut it diagonally this way you would see not a rectangle, but a triangle. So I could have it so you could see a circle, a triangle, or a rectangle, actually a square. If you make it, if I cut it so it's a square, I can have a frame where there's a square hole, a round hole, and a triangular hole. And as I rotate the object in 3 dimensions, it fits snugly through the round hole. It can fit snugly through the square hole. It can fit snugly through the triangle hole, depending on which way I orient this little chunk. And that's a cheap little toy in a Montessori room where you realize that here's a 3-dimensional object that if I look at it this way, I see a circle. If I look at it that way, I see a square. If I look at it this way, I see a triangle.
Yep. And that's the cover of the Gödel Escher Bach book with the lights shining through the letters.
Exactly. And that one, it's actually carved so you get the 3 letters instead of.
Yeah.
So the fact that he was able to take that idea and this way I see G, this way I see E, and this way I see B, G, B, yeah.
So if you take that metaphor and you put it over to the large language models, you'll see what I mean when I say that they're only able to go through the maze in one direction,
Right.
whereas a human brain can go through it in multiple directions. But if you even take it to another level of looking at the world like a flatlander with 2 dimensions,
Right.
and the 3rd dimension you can't visibly see because
Right.
you're a flatlander at 2 dimensions. So it's literally appearing and going out of reality.
Exactly.
There's a whole bunch of studies right now about UAPs, so unidentified flying objects. What is it called? Aerial phenomenon. Is what they're calling it.
Unidentified aerial phenomena. Right.
Right. So they're going from a flying object in 3 dimensions that we understand and trying to bring it to 4 dimensions of aerial phenomenon. But there's something that we're missing in the beholding of this reality where things can come into play and come out of play. And I believe David Bohm, the protege of Albert Einstein, did a lot of work on the holographic theory that things need to be shined on from a specific angle in order to create them in reality.
Now I'll give you the name of one that they discovered, if you have eyes, and they made a big deal out of it. It's called a rainbow.
Mm-hmm.
A rainbow is an illusion caused by moisture in the air acting as a prism to bend the light and refract it. And you can see rainbows. Everybody, a child can see a rainbow, but the physics behind the rainbow is one hell of a complicated physics.
Yeah.
And once you understand how a rainbow is made, it's still fabulous to see one. And if you're
it's a hologram. It's a hologram in the sky.
Essentially. And if you're up in the sky, you see a full circle. If you're on the surface of the earth, you only see a semicircle. So the whole notion of a rainbow as something you can reckon but not understand at a deep mathematical physical level until we get to Newton and light and, and Maxwell and refraction and optics. We don't really understand how can there be a rainbow or the aurora, another one. And it, we only understood the physics of the rainbow and the aurora, I think, the last few hundred years.
We've only started curving glass to look through it with concave, convex, and refraction, and the last 500. I mean, there are cultures that were doing that before. That's the thing that, to me, that's fascinating, is we say we just started to understand this knowledge, but if you study ancient texts, they've had this knowledge for many, many, many.
There's a natural lens. You could take a piece of
Perturbations.
crystal, and it's a lens, except it's a crappy lens. And then eventually they can actually fabricate a lens to, precise mathematical value so that it can make me see clearly instead of fuzzy. So we went from, a piece of
I can
glass-
take you to places. I can take you to places in Peru where you can see that they laser cut the rock thousands and thousands of years ago, and we don't understand how they did what they did at that time. I
So
can
there-
show
so-
you rock that is perfectly clean, laser cut, precise,
and we don't know how
thousands
they
of
did
years
it.
ago.
And we don't know how they did it.
No,
you-
because we just rediscovered the understanding of moving light through glass.
Yeah.
And
But you know about doing it with a block, you can take a block of ice and you put a string on it with weights, and the string will be sitting on top and it will slowly work its way through the ice, but it will heal. As soon as the string falls through, the ice above it will refreeze. And you go, how can you have a string that's halfway through a block of ice? At the halfway point, it's halfway through the block. It's not at the top, it's not at the bottom. You got a string going through the middle of the block of ice, and you take out the weights. And now you got a string going through a block of ice. How the hell did you do that? Well, you have to know something about ice melting from pressure, and or you can just discover it empirically and not understand, why it works. People discovered a lot of these tricks without really understanding the physics, but they could do the trick.
or the chemistry.
Yeah, they didn't have the chemistry, but they could discover the phenomena and exploit the phenomenon without having a theory, a mathematical or scientific theory that explains what's really going on. So, yeah. And the rainbow, God set a rainbow in the sky, as a sign, and you make a nice story about it, and people are amazed and they pay attention, and their eyes don't glaze over because they see the rainbow in the sky. And it sounds like you know what you're talking about, even if you don't.
What you just said triggers me of thinking about going back what you just talked about earlier in the conversation is deep reasoning. So in my perspective, unless you got some feedback that you have, some experience that you already have, and some whatever you saw or whatever, unless you have that, the deep reasoning doesn't exist.
Yeah.
I mean, you won't have deep reasoning with a toddler, right? You have deep reasoning only when you have accumulated the knowledge, the experience, the science behind it.
If you look at football has a funny shape. And when he throws the pass, he spins the football along the long axis. And that means it doesn't tumble. It flies true, right? And everybody who plays football learns that when you throw the football, you don't just throw it, you got to get it to spin correctly on its axis and it'll fly true. Go back to the David and Goliath story. David's got a slingshot. It's actually one of the kind that you throw this way. He goes down to the stream and he carefully picks out 5 smooth stones, not 5 rough stones, 5 smooth. It says 5 smooth stones. Why did they put the word smooth in the text? Because he wants them to fly true. He doesn't want them to tumble. And he picks out a shape of stone that the geometry of the shape is such that it's going to be the best projectile that won't tumble and lose momentum and go and veer. Now, that's intuition. But if you think about it, if I throw enough stones with my sling, I can realize that the round ones and the ragged ones behave differently. I don't have the mathematical model, I don't know the Stokes theorem or whatever the hell it is, but I know that certain shapes are going to fly true and some aren't.
Yeah, so, but that's your best guess. That doesn't prove that it's the deep reasoning yet.
No,
You're not qualified for
but
deep reasoning.
it's awareness of a parameter that matters. I may not have a formula, but I have an intuition about the shape. So I don't know that a football has a certain dimension of the small axis and the long axis. That's a certain ratio, but I know that it has an oblong shape.
Yeah, again, so you have intuition, you have reasoning, you have some prior experience that close to it, but you don't, the way of thinking about the facts is not, you're not qualified for qualifying what I call deep reasoning yet.
You can't optimize it mathematically, but you can imagine, taking a piece of clay and making a clay shaped ball or football or whatever shape you want, a long one, a short one, and play with it and eventually say, this particular geometry seems to be about the best we can do after days and days and weeks of playing with different shapes, and you learn it empirically.
Yep.
It's called empirical knowledge.
Empirical.
Lots of it. It's like learning to cook.
Yeah.
I'm going to turn the heat up. I'm going to turn the heat down. I'm going to put more this ingredient, less of that ingredient, and empirically, you over time get the temperature and everything just right. But you don't have a formula. You don't have a mathematical model that lets you compute that in advance.
Yeah.
In the food kitchens, they sort of get to the point where they can work out the proportions in advance with models, mathematical models.
Yeah. School.
Yeah, and that I was just going to bring up gastronomy as another form of cooking that's highly mathematical.
Yeah. I mean, Alton Brown, when he would give these recipes, he would explain the chemistry behind the recipe, why this ingredient causes it to coagulate or, have changes texture. And he would explain all the sort of the fundamental chemical parts of the food preparation so that you would understand why the dish worked, why the recipe works, and why if you depart from one of those parameters, you're going to get your souffle is going to fall.
Yeah.
Okay. And I loved it, not because I was ever going to cook this stuff, because I really liked the kitchen chemistry, explaining the chemistry of food preparation. You're going to make bread. Is the bread going to fall apart, crumble? Is it going to be hard tack and you can't, how do you make bread that has just the right texture? Go ahead, Joshua.
Yeah. Well, just before I drop off, I just wanted to check in with Sam. And I know you guys were talking when we came in, and thanks for holding the conversation a little longer, but I was just wondering if everything is moving according to expectations in terms of the GCC. And I did find some models of summarizing the YouTube conversations, especially with Microsoft's announcements this week. They have more tools that are available.
Oh,
So,
yeah, to be able to summarize a YouTube from whatever metadata, the VTT. So, go ahead, Stacy.
Can we, Sam Han and Josh, can we pick a date that we get together and talk about how we're going to measure and evaluate? Because I feel like I've done my part to have a full share at GCC, and I'd like to be part of that.
I would too. So
And Barry too, to let him, he could be the objective person. It could be me, you, and Sam, and whoever shows up.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
I
I'd
just
also
wanted
like
to
to
put it
reach
in the-
out to some older GCC members, just because there's those older YouTube channels, YouTube conversations. So I
Absolutely.
would just like to give them the opportunity to be involved in that as well.
I absolutely want to. I just thought if we met first and we could work with the energy first to come up with the rules, then we can make it fun and we could invite the meta community. We could make it more fun, and this way we could earn for causes.
Yeah.
We could
Sure.
play the game in theory and earn for like Printernet, Tammy and Harry's wedding, stuff like that.
What do you think, Sam?
I was thinking about, first of all, we need to calibrate and validate the effectiveness of the tool first. Unless we can
Thank you.
verify the tools is worthy of our time, why would use the tools? I don't think it's ready yet, but if you say it's ready, prove it to me, please. I would
First thing we can do,
I'd
Sam,
like to prove it to you.
the
Yeah.
first thing we can do to get evidence, real evidence.
Yeah.
Shower.
If I bring up the transcript window, which is fairly new in Zoom, the transcript
Right,
window,
right.
and it's got the timestamps in it, but I don't know if it says who's speaking. I forget.
Yeah, he does. I'm getting,
No, so it has timestamps and who's speaking. If I take a passage, let's say a 5-minute passage of the transcript, and I drop it into ChatGPT-4 and I say, can you summarize this conversation? Put it back into narrative prose that a human could read. How good could it do it, given that the phoneme to word mapping from Otter is 95%? Some of the words that it gets are phonetically correct, but not the word that they said. Go ahead, Joshua.
Yeah, I would say we would need a tool that could take the audio and retranscribe it first before we,
Well, the
if you
first thing
want to
we
get
can
it to
copy
higher
and paste
percentage.
we can talk for 5 minutes. I go in, I copy the section of the transcript, drop it into ChatGPT-4. In less than a minute, it'll give me back the whole thing. Then I can share screen or whatever, and you can see, did it interpret the VTT? Is that what it's called, the VTT?
Well, what I would like to do is go around the room, maybe we can do this next Saturday, and say, what is the output and the function that we all would like to see, and then try to get to that point.
Yeah.
Meaning I'd like to see text, I'd like to see audio. I have a little more ambitious ask. I'd like to see a translation in every language. There were Meta, the company Meta just put out a new model that translates to 11,000 or 1,100 languages. So I'm a little more ambitious. I'd like the ability for anyone that speaks any language on this planet to be able to understand these conversations.
I tell you what, of all the three, Bard and ChatGPT and Pi, Bard lets me turn on the microphone. So I'm gonna click the microphone, and I want maybe Joshua to give me a reprise of that last paragraph. And I'll see if it can pick up from my speaker to the microphone on Bard. So
Tell me when.
go.
Okay. I would like to see the ability to take the audio that we have used and translate that into 1,100 different languages. Also to translate the audio into text that can be scrutinized and gone through in a way that we believe is more than 95% accurate in terms of the words that came out of the mouth, using things like Whisper AI and other audio transcribing tools.
It stopped after 1,100 different languages. It only got a line and a half. And then
Okay.
I see that the
Well,
microphone.
that's an audio problem between your speaker, that microphone, blah, blah,
Yeah,
blah.
what happened was your volume faded at a point.
Okay.
Um,
Well,
we could
at any rate, I would like to just write on a little Word doc or whatever we
Bless you.
use and just go around the room and say, Stacy, what would you like to see the ability for us to communicate with all these GCC calls? Barry, Sam, so
I'll
forth.
answer mine now.
Sure, but if we could do it also on
I'd like
Saturday.
the ability to not have to wait. I'm ready to go. I would like to have my final challenge right at the second. You know, I'm not at the second, but like tomorrow. I don't want to have to keep waiting. It's terrible.
I
It can
feel
really
you.
get you nuts.
I feel you.
No, I will paste in what Bard made of that. Oh, well, maybe I should share it because it's too long. So the part that it got is, tell me when go to take the audio that we have used and translate that into 1,100 different languages. That's
Joshua.
That's what it got.
From Joshua though, right? Not from me.
Well,
From
because it
Joshua.
also got my prompting to Joshua. Tell me when go to take the audio. So to translate audio into 1,100 different languages, you can use the Meta AI Massively Multilingual Speech MMS project. This project provides speech to text models for over 1,100 languages and unlabeled data for nearly 4,000 languages. To use the MMS project, you will need to first download and it tells you how to do it. So it got enough of your request to give a suggestion of available technology. Did you want to say so? I need to close this window.
Yeah.
In my picture.
No problem. Tell me when you're back, Barry.
I just closed the chat window so I could see you.
Okay. Yeah, I'd also like to be able to create an avatar using the tools that are out there like DID, that you take a picture of each other, each person here, and then it
that's fun.
animates with expressions as it's speaking. And then you use another tool, it's called 10 Labs, that allows you to put in your own voice. So it gets the intonation and inflection. You sing happy birthday, and then it does that. And then allow you to use, I don't know the name of the other tool. I think it's either in Meta or another company, but it lets you take your intonation and inflection and turn it into different languages. So I'm speaking German, but with my intonation. So these type of things. And I also want to bring up in another GCC conversation, a company that was a spinoff of Apple that is about to launch their product this year. It's called Humane. And it's a great name for an AI company, but it's a bunch of Apple executives, the people that created the iPod and all these different devices at Apple. And they're trying to create a device that sits in your pocket that perceives the world through AI and translate it to get rid of the screen itself in computing. So I think moving forward, these humane type of understandings, I would like to produce tools for future generations that work with how they want to perceive and communicate with our conversations from the past and moving forward to the future.
And I would just like to add that as much as I want to go forward with certain things like letting people create, I want to go backward with letting, I would like to stay in that circle and discuss the ethics of all of it. I think there needs to be an ethics course. To me, it's like top level security. If you were in the Army, you have to go top level.
Yeah, and if you go back to the old conversations, I've mentioned this 4 years ago. When we get to this point in 2023, in the future, when we can go back through all these conversations, we need the agreement of the people that they want their information to be available. And if not, we need to be able to scrub it. And that's going to be a very important ask for the computer, to scrub the people that don't want to be acknowledged in these conversations from the past.
So can I make a motion?
Yep.
Can I make a motion that we put out a call for GCC alumni or anybody present? Anybody could actually watch, even if they're not, active. But we'll have a protocol, whatever. But it's ethics, legal things, just in general, so that kids can learn. It's just a whole comprehensive learning thing, and that's a whole nother product. And we could use that to fund the schools of the future.
Yeah, and can we just put out, if someone doesn't want to be their likeness or their picture acknowledged?
Well, we can workshop that. We could do that in the class, because we have Stuart. Doug and I have a friend who's like, he has like, I think 10 agreements or something, but there's like an order that I think would be better followed, that I'd like to be part of the team that sets the order, because I think I could save a lot of anxiety from you guys just by matching, being an energy director, which is a new term that I think we need for the future, because I'm an energy director.
Okay. And I just wanted to say that if we had an option for anonymous, where their words can be there, but it's not linked to the person, and if they want to agree to that, that's a simple way for someone to say no and then say yes. No, I don't want my likeliness to be used. Yes, I would be fine if it was completely anonymous and does not link back to me.
And don't you think that's a great conversation / debate to see from all sides? I think that's exciting. That should be a whole thing on its own that could just keep revolving around the world.
I see another 3 years of conversation with it's everybody, like the whole Doug Breitbart, it's all of us or none of us.
But if we do what I asked, which is to let people go ahead on their own, you don't have to wait for everybody else, just like I won't have to wait. And so that solves the problem for, people get stuck. It took me, I came in 2017. I've been saying this since 2017, and I haven't been heard till maybe today. And I'm saying that we could have gotten to this point from last week to this week. We need to fix the bias. We really do. We really need to fix the bias. Now, it's not about vaginas and penises. It's about fractals of what we call gender and constructs. We're each unique. That's why we have different fingerprints. Otherwise, you're going to keep hitting your head against the wall, and I'm going to let you. This is my last freebie here. because I feel like I've given a lot of value, and you know, why buy the cow?
Stacy,
Which I
look
always
at the
hated,
chat.
but
I
What?
managed to capture on the mic just the first part of your, and I would just like to add that as much as I want to go forward with certain things like letting people create, I want to go backwards, I would like to stay in the circle and discuss the ethics of it all, blah, blah. And then when you said ethics course, the mic shut off. But now in chunks, I'm now giving you the response from Bard. One of them is, if you scroll down, bias. Large language models are trained on massive data sets of text. This means that they can reflect the biases that are present in these data. So look, here Bard took just the first half a sentence and generated a 4, 5, 6 paragraph response to it. And, if we were to do this a little more systematically, we could prepare a paragraph that I want to say. I articulate it carefully, succinctly, clearly, distinctly, and let the microphone catch it. And then when I stop, I say, okay, can I have the answer now? And then I look at the answer. Unfortunately, right now, it's a little bit hodgepodgey, because the mic stopped, in the middle of the
it is extremely important for mental health to do that from all sides. Extremely, extremely important. And plus, we have a world filled of trauma-filled people that have a very hairpin trigger. Like this is number one as far as I'm concerned.
It proves that it can listen to speech, it can interpret the speech, it can respond to this. This is Bard. Respond to the speech in text, and you get it right away. And you say, did it understand what I was saying? Did the words map? Did the phonemes map into the correct words and the sentences? Did it even get the sentences? And then did what it said back make sense to me? I can't do that here. My brain can't do that. This thing's better than me. Joshua.
I just gonna leave with a formula. The intention multiplied by the mechanism equals the success. I times M equals S. And I think it's very important that we spend some time discussing intentions. We don't have to waste time discussing why those intentions are important to us, so we don't take another 3 years, but at least make sure that we're heard, where our intention is written down somewhere so that they can be honored ethically.
Right. Yeah.
I would
mean,
suggest that we announce the intention before we end any conversation, we start any conversation, because that intention will guide us towards the goal more focused, in a more focused
I
way.
can see a protocol for these Zoom sessions where before you come into the session, you have an agenda item in mind that you want to bring up. And before you come in, you speak the agenda item to Bard and make sure that it got the words. And then you see the response that Bard gave you to your articulated agenda, and you go, is that good enough that these humans, these mediocre humans, can now get it?
Yeah, and one of the intentions I have is we used to practice breaking out into the breakout rooms to have separate conversations and then come back into the group room and talk about the separateness in a holistic way.
Yeah.
And I'd like to get back to that so that we're not wasting people's time. If we're in a group conversation, I just talked to Diggy on a side chat and he's doing different things. He's watching Formula One right now, as well as he really wants to come to the meetings, and it's hard, his time zone. But I think it's very important, every community that I'm involved in Zoom chats, that you have the ability to leave this conversation, and there's breakout rooms on the side.
Yeah.
And we were also working in the beginning of GCC with another group. Maybe Stacy remembers the name. It was Interweaving. What was the group where they would make a Google Doc
no
with all the
idea.
intentional. Okay,
I
there was
wasn't- I
another.
wasn't there.
Oh, okay. Maybe it was before you got here.
Yeah,
There
it
was
was.
another group of people. I'm trying to remember their name. It was something like Interwoven Conversations, but they would ask the group a list of intentions to talk about. They'd made a Google Doc on each one of these intentions, and then they made the breakout rooms the names of these. So you could go in there and hop over to the different conversations and then hop back to the main room. And I think that's an important practice that will allow us to scale, because therefore we can have 20 conversations going at once And then you go back to the main room at a certain time at the, half an hour before the end or an hour before the end. But you can scale if you can break out of a room. If you're stuck in a room, much like what just happened this last week with DeSantos on Twitter Spaces, everyone was stuck in that one conversation. They should have broken out, figured out what they wanted to say, and then come back to the group, which they haven't learned yet on Twitter Spaces. But I've done a lot of work with Clubhouse and Clubhouse runs hundreds and hundreds of conversations simultaneously, and you can pop over to all of them. So it's a very hard skill to do, but if GCC can figure that out, we can scale exponentially.
It sounds like an open space technology.
Yeah, open space, the ability to see a list of the conversations that are happening and to define them clearly. And that's what
That's really nice.
the app Clubhouse has tried to create, but I think they've veered off into a monetization that has
By the way,
stopped-
Josh, if
Yep.
if we would have had more of what I'm talking about, that creative, you would have gotten more of what you want, because it's that masculine focus that you found in Clubhouse, and the other, that's why I didn't go. I didn't even, I was gone.
Yeah,
I never
well,
even liked it. Same thing with PKE. The minute they got Keldon involved, I was gone.
yeah, well, that's what I saw in Clubhouses. There's been communities that have risen up that are beautiful and have wonderful scheduled conversations, have everyone from Avi Loeb to the head of NASA. I mean, I've been in so many wonderful conversations on Clubhouse that were very well done, but those communities over time break down because of the people problem, where different personalities clash, someone blocks someone, blah, blah, blah. And we've had that here at GCC as well. So the ability to manage multiple conversations and to bring it under one roof of one community, I think is impossible. But to fraction off and be able to circle around back to each other is something that we could figure out how to do. In other words, inviting other communities to be partners and collaborate on
We
specific
can't even get
days.
along with ourselves. You want to invite,
Sure, we can.
I would say you take a representative, each DAO picks their representative, and then the three talk, and then they sprout out like that. Otherwise, chaos.
Practice. I'm just saying it's a practice that you have to figure out what works for you. And that's what I did on Clubhouse for 2 years and practice it with many, many, I think it was I've got 1,800 people that I've been working with.
Structure create behavior. So decide what behavior you want and create a structure to support it. Then it's done.
And that only works for that one room in that one Zoom call and that conversation.
Yep.
It's
Yeah,
ephemeral.
Did you see what I put in the chat?
No.
It
You're
says-
gonna save the
remember-
chat, right?
Remember the name of the technique you're referring to? It's called interwoven conversations. It's a way of facilitating group conversation. I managed to get a good long paragraph of yours in the mic. And then I pasted in that and also the response. I screwed up the first paste. I pasted the same thing twice, but you can see
Okay.
that without a whole lot of overhead, I got at least portion of what you said and all of the response.
Well, as soon as the M1 computer came out with Apple, I bought that to use for this, to do this kind of work. It turns out that's a little bit slow now. Apple has their big conference on June 5th, and I'm hoping they announce the M3. I was going to buy the M2 computer, but with all of this new large language models, I'm waiting to find out what level of computing power do I need in order to use these tools properly without them breaking. So I don't know if Sam, do you have a fancy computer? I don't know.
Well, the fancy one actually right now, you said I'm getting the NVIDIA 1000 or M1000. I forgot what was the number now, the CPU. So the GPU, you can put 6 of those baby in the computer to do a mainframe sort of computation. Yeah, so there's a lot of crazy thing. The way I think about it is that I'm waiting for the tool to be ready before I invest in the hardware, because once you get the hardware, the depreciation rate is so fast that it's going crazy. It's not worth the one investment until the tools is ready.
That's exactly what I'm waiting for too. And that's why I wanted to give it till August to do this kind of work because I feel that these tools somewhere between August and September, it'll be clear what kind of tools will emerge out of these new language models that will be the tools that will stick around for a while. I don't know if ChatGPT will be working 2 years from now, or if it'll be banned from the United States government, because I know Italy's already banned it. So we'll see.
Did that thing that Anna's son was working on and other people were working on it in other spaces that would, like the, I guess the blockchain or whatever it is, that would make sure that, like, if I used an artist's picture, that it would track back. How's that's, I would like to get into one just to listen, because I do learn very well when I listen. Can you direct me towards somebody that could come with, like, maybe Diggy could come with me and take me there, or you could take me there, or somebody could take me to a conversation so I could hear a little bit more, because that's fun for me. I'm not looking to compete. That's what they have to understand. I don't want to compete. I'm done. I did the hard part. I wish that was hell. These last few years were hell. I never want to go there again. I want to dive back in and be a mermaid, and I want to create my underwater world now. I'm done. So it's not competition, but I want to learn. Okay. And then by the time I'm done, you guys will be done.
Say that again, Stacy. What exactly you want to learn?
I want to be able to listen in on conversations where the very masculine, the bro guys, the clubhouse, the
Clubhouse isn't bro guys, just so you know, it's mostly
it's
women.
half and half. It's half.
Yeah.
Well, I never stayed. It might have changed. I didn't even go because I already saw I didn't even have to go. But like the quest people, the people that are going on, I'm not saying every person. I'm just saying all I want to do is listen to many different perspectives, a whole bunch of, I want to hear like when you used to talk with Johnny D, and the two of you were talking ethically, that helped me, because remember, I'm a 5. So I like to see both sides. Then I take it and I do my thing, the way Barry does his thing over there, and your master does his thing over there. But if I'm not allowed in the rooms, I'm like working with a blindfold on, because I don't know what's happening behind my head. I need all that perspective. That's where the feminine bias comes in. That's why I keep bringing it up, because that's the shift that we actually can control.
Yeah. I've found that if I want to get into these conversations, I use YouTube, and I go to the YouTube channel of the universities or like the Commonwealth Club or different places that are having these conversations in front of an audience. And then I listen back to the lectures in front of the audience.
Yeah,
And then
that doesn't work well for
hopefully,
me.
yeah, I wish I could get you into every room, but I mean, there's
I only
so
need
many.
one. I need when you pass a room, and that's the conversation. It doesn't have to be you. I know you're not going to do it. I'm not even asking. I asked you for 4 years. But if any vagina, if you're listening, I'm looking for somebody to get me to within earshot so I could hear these conversations.
Well, I don't have a vagina, but I'm also looking to get into earshot of these conversations as well.
Well, you don't help me. I'm not helping you.
What's the conversation you are interested in? Because there's so many conversations. So specific.
The conversations. So the intersection, the reason I want to be, the intersection is where ethics meet the user experience, the consumer experience, the owner, the worker, all the different positions that somebody would have. I want to be in that culture medium where those conversations and those concerns are being brought up. Maybe I'll see something from my point that somebody else, that Barry didn't see from his point, or that Josh didn't see from his point. Go ahead, Josh.
Stacey, just share with you, have you watched the latest series of TED that was just released this last month?
And I'm not going to. I'm not interested. I don't want, I'm enjoying, no, I'm just trying to explain. I know you like doing that. I have very focused energy, believe it or not. I am very creative, but I also have very focused. I know how to blend for myself. I just want to be left alone to do my thing. I'm a swimmer. I'm a mermaid. I want to flow.
No, I understand. I'm just saying the conversation you asked for, there's a few of those on the latest TED where they
That's a better way. What would it be called? That would be very helpful. Thank you. What would be one that I might, do you have one? Can you think of one?
I don't know the exact name of the TED talk, but there was one with the gentleman who did a deep fake on Tom Cruise. and they had an ethical conversation of what it means to do deep fakes.
I'll find, so, well, maybe Sam's
If you typed
looking
in
for
TED
it.
Talk, Tom Cruise deep fake, it'll pop up.
All right, sounds good.
And
And
then
now I,
Yeah, and there's been a few on the TED aspect. The reason I find TED to be hard is because they record them, they process
Hey.
them. By the time they come out, it's 4 weeks later, and AI is moving so fast that 4 weeks in the AI world is kind of like a year. So
yeah.
How about 10 years?
I didn't want to say that, but yes, you're right, Sam Chan. Did you have something, Sam Han, before we go?
I just heard some very let's say energetic voices, so I thought I'd come in and see what was going on.
We were just discussing making a list together as this group right here, the five of us, for intentions on how to use these new technologies in order to go through all of the conversations, summarize them, so on and so forth, and build something for future generations to be able to use and function with. And when we were going to do that, we said maybe we can talk about it next week. And Stacy said, no, I want to talk about it now. So that's what got energetic.
There it is. I pasted in as much as I could get, which is not the totality of it. It's at least.
Thank you, Barry.
I mean, you guys are talking faster than I could ferry the things back and forth and get your answers, but I mean, why are we talking at each other without the information? We can talk to Bart, talk literally out loud to Bart and get the answer back. And then we can read the answer and figure out what the hell it said.
Well, how about you make that protocol and we'll try it on a Saturday? I'm all for it.
And go to, we can go out to breakout rooms, whatever, because I can turn the mic on, and as long as the mic stays on long enough to get enough of the paragraph, I can get Bard's answer. And then I can read the paragraph and Bard's answer and scratch my head and finally realize, oh, okay, I see what the question was. I see that Bard has useful information. Oh, okay, that's fine. Maybe there's something in there that I like too. But it's otherwise it's just it's going past so damn fast. I can't stay in sync. You're muted, Sam.
Yeah, you're muted.
I have a proposal. At the end of every video, we give ourselves calibration, validation, feedback to gauge. I have a friend of mine that's a business consultant, and the question he asked me before we end the session, what do I need to do to give myself a 10?
I mean, is there any reason why there's somebody here who doesn't have Google Bard? It's free. It's got a mic on it, like at least mine does. And then you can deliver your oration to it and get back a response and then figure out, is this, could Barry figure out what I'm saying? Go ahead, Sam.
So I noticed that you didn't respond to Sam's question.
No, in fact, I had wanted to start the mic and I was too late. And he's talking faster than I can listen. And also, because he has a bit of an accent, it's even harder for me to listen. So I know that he said something. I said, damn it, I lost the chance to capture it. Now, maybe I can go to the transcript and do it, but I can't listen as fast as people talk. I'm sorry. My language parsing part of my brain just doesn't run that fast. Where is the transcript?
So in response to the topic that Josh summarized for me, I did state my intention for all of these sessions 5, 6, 7, 4, 3, 2, 1 years ago. And it's still pretty consistent with that. So I can restate it if we want to do a session, but I believe I've been on the record for what I really want to do here. Sorry, and just one more time, if I may, Barry.
Yeah.
Sam's question, which I was curious about, whether you had a response, was at the end of a session, one way of doing a retrospective for yourself is, what do I need to do to give myself a 10 for this session? That was a question Sam asked via some other advisor.
To give myself a 10, well, I need an agent who can listen as fast as people talk, capture the oration in real time, put the oration into a text format so I can read it later, and process it down to a summary that I can read and then respond. Because I lack the faculty of real-time listening to more than about a short paragraph and having time to think about it and determine what was I at? What was I at? Well, I didn't even get the words. If I could capture the audio in speech to text, in Bard or something like that, get it rephrased in a nice coherent paragraph that's grammatically correct and the words that I didn't hear are in there, and then see Bard's response and look at that and scratch my head, then maybe in about 3 or 4 minutes I could give you a useful response. Real time, it's crapshoot.
We can do that if, again, looking at with the feedback you just given me, right? So every conversation we have, as soon as I say something, I gotta start the stopwatch for 3 minutes before we allowed to say another word from another person.
If you want a real-time response from me, you have to speak slowly enough that this gizmo up here can parse the phonemes into syllables, into words, into sentences, and extract the semantic content in real time.
Okay.
Think about what was there and then form a response. This thing can't do that.
Got it.
I don't
So
know how other people can do it.
so speak slowly and pause until you give us a go ahead to speak the next sentence.
I mean, when I paste stuff into chat, it says I have a 1,000 character limit. Don't give me more than 1,000 characters at a time. What is 1,000 characters? It's about, what is that, about 20 words, 80 words, paragraph.
Right, Joshua, go for it.
The one thing that I would ask is for a clear example of moderation before the conversation begins, and to be clear about which rules we're following during those conversations, meaning I was expecting to be off at 10 a.m. and it's, I think, 11:22 Pacific time. So I would just like, one of my favorite GCC was Sam Hahn, and I can't remember the gentleman's name, Eric. He was working with the pie, the Raspberry Pis. Do you remember this gentleman, Sam Hahn? The Eric, I can't remember his last name.
Not
But at any
Stacey
rate,
Rangel.
what was his name, Barry?
Stacey has a friend named Eric Rangel.
Eric Rangel, that's exactly who it was.
That Eric, okay.
And Eric and Sam Hahn put a timer together. And then after we stated something, we went through it with a specific time. Everyone had their moment. And then at the end, was that complete? Okay, and then move on to the next subject. And it was very well kept minutes. It was a very nice conversation. It was a little dry in that term, but I felt like everyone got heard and it was productive. It was the best barn raising, I would say, not the best GCC, but the best barn raising. And if we could go back to that sort of moderation where it's clear what to expect, it's clear when you get to speak, when you don't, because the idea of raising the hand is wonderful and everyone's pretty respectful, but it can take 10 to 15 minutes with your hand raised, as opposed to, we're going to talk for 20 minutes on the subject. We're going to state it, go around the room. Everyone gets, 2 minutes, and then wrap it up with the ask that Sam Chan just asked. How could I do that little session better on a scale of 1 to 10, and then move on to the next subject? So that's my ask, is that we have the ability to give feedback, to know who's speaking, and the moderation is clear that if Barry is the moderator of this conversation, then we respect Barry's moderation abilities. And then the next week we give another moderation to another person. I think that's what we used to do. And I think that would be nice if we could do that again. And I'm complete. Thank you.
Thank you.
I mean, if you think of a press conference like the White House press conferences, the reporter will ask a question that is probably no more than 30 seconds and no more than about 3 or 4 sentences. And then JFK will say, let me say this about that. and then they'll say something that's relevant. But, you know, if a journalist asked a question that was like a 5-minute rant, JFK would say, well, was that a speech or is there a question in there? And there wouldn't be a response, because they would say, was that a speech or was there a question in there?
So call it moderation or call it what you will. This session will not be uploadable easily to YouTube if we go beyond noon Pacific time. Plus, I got to go get some tires switched out, so I got to leave at noon.
Well, so I have a question then. Before you go, then I have a question, being that's the case. Do you agree to not watch it again until it's available to all of us at the same time?
No,
You don't agree to that? Okay.
You have to edit it, don't you? Or edit out the
Well, he did it. I didn't even have to go that far. He already told me. I mean, if he wants to tell me why, but I don't need to know. That's okay.
probably for a technical reason, not a political reason.
Is it for a technical or a political reason?
there's no political reason. I just have to, be free to do what I want with my videos.
Okay, so then, oh, with your videos?
Yes, they're on my disc. I mean, I'll share them clearly, but they are my videos. Yes.
Well, it's in, bye, Josh. We'll save it for
Cheers.
next time, but it's interesting that you say my videos.
Yes,
we can
I put
save
the
that for
effort
another
into
call.
recording these things. They're on my machine until they're shared publicly.
Oh, no, that's fine. I was thinking about when I came in after Doug gave up Sunday's 2-hour call and I said, I'm going to take the first hour of Sunday's call. And you said, who did you ask? That's all I'm referring to, but have fun.
You're free to do so, Stacy.
Oh, did she disconnect or did she just turn
Yeah, she disconnected.
disconnected?
So I think I pissed her off in some way.
Well, this is the problem with communication, is that you say one thing and the listener hears something other than what you said, because the English language is so freaking ambiguous.
Yeah,
I had this
a lot of
problem.
assumptions there.
I had this problem Thursday in the community center. I stopped at the front desk as I came in and I said to the attendant there, I said, we're having two issues with the Wi-Fi in our meetings. One is that the site certificate here is expired. And that means getting on the Wi-Fi on your laptop is a pain in the ass because you got to bypass the restrictions. And number two, there's not enough bandwidth in the Wi-Fi. We're getting bandwidth limitations. So Ann calls up Jerry, the IT guy, and transmits that message garbled. And she says, the guy here from the Fix-It shop downstairs says there's no Wi-Fi. And I said, but she's, and he knows about the site certificate problem, and she hangs up. So I go upstairs, we start the meeting at noon, like a half an hour later. And just as we're starting the meeting, the Wi-Fi turns off. And we go, oh, the internet went down. So people are pulling out their cell phones and give them a hotspot, so I can get back online. And the Wi-Fi comes back. Oh, we're back. And then it goes down again. And I go, what the hell was that? I go, oh my God. When Ann called Jerry, she gave him a different message than I gave her. Jerry thought that the Wi-Fi wasn't working and he power cycled it on us. That wasn't the question. The question is, there's not enough bandwidth to have 12 people on the Wi-Fi. That was the message. Not in the Fix-It shop. We couldn't get the signal. I go, I can't even communicate a simple technical message that gets relayed through a non-technical person who changes the message to cause the technical guy to do exactly the wrong thing.
You give the message to a wrong translator that mess up your translation.
The only person available. I can't call. I said, can I talk to Jerry direct? No, you're not allowed to. She has to relay the message, but she doesn't understand the message.
Yeah, I call it bad translator.
She confabulating about no Wi-Fi downstairs. No, that wasn't, I never said that. I said, we've got two issues. One is the site certificate. The other one is there's not enough bandwidth for the size of our meetings.
So change the verbal translation into written translation. Give her something black and white and have her read it to Jerry.
I had sent them email last summer about this more than once.
I mean, print out a piece of paper, hand it to her, read it
Said,
to Jerry.
right. I sent email, nothing happened. So now I tell it to her directly because she's the person at the front desk, and she miscommunicates the message on the phone while I'm standing there. And I can tell she's miscommunicating it. And then the guy turns off the Wi-Fi and turns it back on again. just as the meeting's getting started.
Yeah.
I go-
Now we try to save the world.
I go, that was the wrong thing to do.
Yeah.
I made it worse.
Yeah. You learn something. It's part of your learning cycle.
I learned
Don't
that
cave.
the technical guy has to talk to the technical guy.
Yep, you got it.
And if I'm not allowed to, then I can't get the problem addressed.
Yeah.
And I say to the people at Toastmasters, we may have to abandon this whole approach and completely rethink our hybrid meetings. We can't have 12 people with their own laptops because the system, we're clogging up the Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
We have to do something else.
Yeah.
And we have to think about what else can we do, because otherwise the people who are coming in remotely can't participate anymore.
Well, they can bring in a laptop, but they have to use their own hotspot for it. Or they use somebody else's hotspot for it, not the Wi-Fi.
Oh, then guess what? How many people do you think know how to do a hotspot?
That's a different
The
problem.
one other person who was really as sharp as I am jumped up and he says, I can make a hotspot for you, Barry. So that so the people at home, can at least get the audio
Yeah.
and my camera, okay, my tripod camera. And so he was solving the problem in real time, and he brings his cell phone over, and then I find his Wi-Fi hotspot, but then he's got to type in the security code.
Right.
All right, so it takes about a minute, and we're up for like a minute, and then the Wi-Fi comes back. And it didn't occur to me that the IT guy was power cycling it.
Right.
And I figured that out a day later.
Well, the hotspot you can change the password to something like 12345 or something like that, very simple. The other thing also that with the hotspot right now with the 5G network, it can go to 100 meg. It's pretty good. Yeah.
So here we are, we're using the technology of the community center, which is functional but limited, and we're pushing the boundaries of the functionality of the community center, and we're going to have to completely rethink the whole deal, or else we're going to spend all of our time fixing the damn glitches and not having a meeting.
Yeah.
Just like here, instead of having a conversation, we're having a conversation about why our conversations aren't working. Why? Because people are talking and they're not listening.
Yes.
Or they forgot their mic, or like that went by so fast I couldn't parse it.
I understand. It's not easy. Like I say, it's really hard.
I mean, my whole career is in communication technology, but the sociology of human communication, talking and listening and thinking and responding, that is completely different than the technology of does the phone work if I pick it up and I talk and you hear me. You may not understand what the fuck I said, and I'm yelling at you, but the audio went through.
Yeah, I agree.
Anyway, I think we should not let this run, so otherwise we won't have the audio on the YouTube.
All right, see you tomorrow.
Yeah, let me make sure I save the chat, because in the chat I did at least 3 or 4 attempts to capture the audio in Bard.
Save the transcript. You save.
Yeah, I'm going to save the transcript, put it in the not the transcript. Well, I could save the transcript, except I didn't. Well, I guess I could. I don't think I'm going to save the transcript. That'll be up on.
No, basically, if you save the transcript, then you can play with it later on if you want.
Oh, yeah, I guess I could. Let's see.
Always a choice is better than no choice.
I got to figure out how to do that. Let's see. Can I even save the where's the transcript?
Yeah, go show full transcript.
Oh, it's in the same place. Okay. Yeah. Where is it? No, that's the chat. Where's the transcript? I lost it again.
Click on the button that says CC and then.
Oh, show captions. That's the one.
Yep.
View full transcript.
Yep, that's what
Is there a save button on it?
On the very bottom.
Save transcript. Okay, there it is.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, I had never done that before. Now that'll only be since I joined. because I only get the transcript since I joined.
Yeah, no, this is new, yeah.
All right, so I'll put those in the messenger for Saturday barn raise.
Got it.
And I mean, you could take segments of it and put it into Chat GPT.
Again, it's just a play with it.
It's a 2,000 token buffer, which is about 1,000 words, I think.
Let's try to find out if we can pay for more token or whatever. I guess that's how it goes.
I think you have to wait for GPT-5, and that's gonna probably be $50 a month. I'm gonna just randomly guessing.
We'll see. We'll see.
Okay, Sam, if you're still listening, we're gonna end our thingy here.
Okay. Thank you. See you
Okay,
tomorrow.
Yeah. All right, Sam Han, are you still there? It is 40 minutes past the third hour. I'm gonna leave the meeting and you're not attending to stop it, so I'll tell you. 40 minutes past the third hour.